The diner exploded in flame at 2:47 a.m. By dawn, Ava's mother was gone. Derek Hale didn't just break her arm, he shattered every illusion of safety she'd built after escaping him. One phone call to a stranger in a tailored suit, one decision that would drag her from the wreckage of her old life straight into a world where violence wore expensive cologne and power moved in shadows. This is the story of how Ava Carter learned that sometimes salvation comes with a price tag written in blood. Stay until the end. Hit that like button. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The morning shift at Rosie's Diner started the way it always did. Coffee burning in the pot, grease splattered across the grill, and Ava Carter's hands moving on autopilot through the motions of survival. She tied her apron strings twice, a habit from the old days when Derek would yank them loose just to watch her scramble. Even now, 6 months after she'd left him, her fingers remembered the fear. "Table 4 needs a refill," Rosie called from the kitchen window, her voice rough from 40 years of cigarettes and taking nobody's shit. Ava grabbed the pot, its handle warm against her palm, and headed toward the corner booth where Marco DeLuca sat with his newspaper and his usual black coffee, 2 eggs over easy, wheat toast dry. He'd been coming in every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 2 months, always polite, always tipping exactly 20%, always gone by 8:30. She didn't know what he did for a living. The suit suggested lawyer or banker, but his hands told a different story. Scarred knuckles, a thin white line across his left thumb that looked like it came from something sharp. "More coffee?" she asked, already pouring. He glanced up, and for just a second, his eyes, dark brown, almost black, caught hers with an intensity that made her breath hitch. Then he smiled, and the moment passed. "Thank you, Ava." He always used her name. Never sweetheart or hon, like the truckers. Never the loaded silence of men who thought a smile was an invitation. Just her name, like it mattered. She was turning away when the bell above the door chimed. Her body knew before her brain caught up. The coffee pot trembled in her hand, a drop splashing onto the linoleum. Derek Hale walked into Rosie's Diner like he owned it. He'd lost weight. His jaw carried a week's worth of stubble, and his eyes had that glassy, manic shine she remembered from the worst nights, the ones that ended with her locked in the bathroom, praying the door would hold. "There you are, baby." His voice carried across the diner, syrup-sweet and poison-laced. "Been looking everywhere for you." The morning regulars went quiet. Rosie's hand froze on the grill spatula. Ava set the coffee pot down on the nearest table because her hands wouldn't stop shaking. "You need to leave." "That's no way to greet your boyfriend." Derek moved closer, his boots heavy on the floor. "We need to talk." "We have nothing to talk about." She hated how thin her voice sounded, how easily fear stripped away the person she'd been trying to become. "I got the restraining order. You're not supposed to be within 500 feet of me." He laughed, and the sound made her skin crawl. "Piece of paper doesn't mean shit, Ava. You know that." She stepped backward. Her hip hit the counter. Derek closed the distance between them in 3 strides, his hand clamping around her wrist, the same grip that had left bruises shaped like fingerprints, the same pressure that had cracked her phone screen when he'd ripped it from her hand and thrown it against the wall. "You think you can just leave me? Embarrass me in front of everyone? Make me look like some kind of... Let go of her!" The voice came from behind Derek, calm and cold as lake water in January. Marco DeLuca had risen from his booth. He wasn't a large man, maybe 5'10", lean build, but something in the way he stood made Derek's hand loosen on Ava's wrist. "This doesn't concern you, friend." Derek's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Just having a conversation with my girl." "She's not your girl." Marco moved forward, each step deliberate. "And this conversation is over." Derek released Ava's wrist and turned to face Marco fully. "You her new boyfriend? That why she left? Been fucking some suit behind my back?" "I'm going to ask you once more." Marco's voice didn't rise, didn't sharpen. It simply existed, flat and absolute. "Leave." "Or what?" Derek's hands curled into fists. "You gonna make me, pretty boy?" What happened next took maybe 3 seconds. Derek swung first, a wild haymaker that would have connected with Marco's jaw if Marco had been standing still. But Marco wasn't. He shifted his weight, let Derek's momentum carry him forward, and drove his knee into Derek's stomach with surgical precision. Derek folded, gasping. Marco caught him by the collar, held him upright. "You're going to walk out that door. You're going to get in your truck. and you're never going to come near Ava again. Understand? Derek wheezed, spittle on his lips. Fuck you. Marco's expression didn't change. He simply tightened his grip on Derek's collar and walked him toward the door like a bouncer removing drunk trash. At the threshold, he leaned in close and whispered something Ava couldn't hear. Whatever it was drained the color from Derek's face. Marco released him, and Derek stumbled out into the parking lot, clutching his stomach. The diner exhaled. Rosie emerged from the kitchen, her face carefully neutral. Well, that was something. Marco returned to his booth, picked up his newspaper like nothing had happened. His coffee had gone cold. Ava's legs felt like water. She braced herself against the counter, her wrist throbbing where Derek had grabbed her. It would bruise by tomorrow, a constellation of purple and yellow she'd have to explain away. You okay, honey? Rosie touched her shoulder and Ava flinched before she could stop herself. I'm fine. The lie tasted familiar. I just need a minute. She retreated to the back, past the industrial dishwasher and the storage room that smelled like bleach and old grease, and locked herself in the tiny bathroom that barely had room to turn around. Her reflection in the mirror looked pale, eyes too wide, dark circles underneath from too many nights sleeping with one ear listening for footsteps in the hallway. She'd left Derek 6 months ago, packed 2 bags while he was at work, emptied their joint account, her money, every cent she'd saved from tips, and moved into a studio apartment on the other side of town with her mother Elena, who had lung cancer and couldn't work anymore. The restraining order had cost $400 she couldn't afford. Derek had laughed when the sheriff served him the papers. Piece of paper doesn't mean shit. He'd been right. Ava splashed cold water on her face, careful not to smudge the concealer hiding the shadows. Her hands had finally stopped shaking. When she emerged, Marco was still at his booth. He'd ordered another coffee from Rosie and was reading the sports section with the same focused attention most people reserve for surgery. Ava approached slowly. Thank you. He looked up. Don't mention it. I mean it. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. He folded the newspaper, and his eyes held hers with that same intensity from before. Nobody deserves to be treated that way. She wanted to ask what he'd whispered to Derek, wanted to know why a man who came in for eggs and coffee twice a week had intervened like it was reflex, wanted to understand the calm in his voice when he'd made a threat that had terrified Derek more than physical violence. Instead, she said, Your eggs are probably cold. I can get Rosie to make fresh ones. These are fine. He picked up his fork, and the conversation was over. Ava finished her shift in a haze, refilling coffee and delivering plates and smiling at customers while her brain replayed Derek's face in the parking lot, the way Marco's knee had driven into his stomach with the efficiency of someone who'd done it before. At 3 o'clock, Rosie counted out her tips, $62.30, and told her to take tomorrow off. You sure? Ava needed the money, needed every dollar for her mother's prescriptions, for the rent that was already 2 weeks late, for the GED classes she was taking at night, because she'd dropped out of high school when Derek convinced her she didn't need an education. I'm sure, Rosie squeezed her hand. And Ava, that restraining order? It's just paper. You need real protection, you call someone who can help. Like who? Rosie didn't answer, just handed her an extra 20 from the register. For emergencies, the walk back to her apartment took 15 minutes through streets that had seemed safe in daylight, but turned threatening as shadows lengthened. Ava kept her keys between her fingers, her phone in her pocket, her eyes scanning every alley and parked car. Derek's truck wasn't anywhere she could see. That should have been comforting. It wasn't. Her apartment building was a 3-story walk-up with peeling paint and a front door that didn't lock properly. She climbed to the 2nd floor, her legs aching from 8 hours on her feet, and unlocked the deadbolt she'd installed herself because the landlord wouldn't. Mom? Elena Carter sat in her recliner by the window, an oxygen tank beside her and a crossword puzzle in her lap. She'd been beautiful once. Ava had seen the photos, her mother's dark hair thick and shining, her smile wide and unbroken. Cancer had whittled her down to angles and exhaustion. How was work? Elena's voice rasped like sandpaper. Fine. Ava dropped her purse on the kitchen counter, which was really just an extension of the living room because the whole apartment was basically one room with a bathroom attached. Derek showed up. Elena's hand tightened on her pen. What happened? One of the regulars handled it. Ava kicked off her shoes and collapsed onto the sagging couch. Guy named Marco, he made Derek leave. Made him? Yeah. Ava closed her eyes, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. Derek won't let this go, Mom. You know he won't. Then we'll deal with it. Elena's conviction would have been more reassuring if she didn't weigh 90 pounds and require supplemental oxygen. We've made it this far. This far. 6 months of looking over her shoulder. 6 months of jumping at every unexpected sound. 6 months of building a life so fragile one strong wind could knock it down. Ava's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but curiosity, or maybe desperation, made her thumb the green button. Ava Carter? A man's voice, unfamiliar. Who is this? My name is Vincent. I work with Marco DeLuca. He wanted me to check in, make sure you got home safely. Her pulse spiked. How did you get my number? Mr. DeLuca has resources. A pause. He's concerned about your ex-boyfriend, thinks he might try something. Tell Marco I appreciate his help, but I can take care of myself. With respect, Miss Carter, I don't think you can. Vincent's tone wasn't unkind, just factual. Derek Hale has a history. 2 prior domestic violence charges, both dropped when the victims recanted. He spent 18 months in county for assault, and he's been telling people at his regular bar that he's going to teach his bitch a lesson. Ice slid down Ava's spine. How do you know all that? Like I said, resources. Another pause. Mr. DeLuca would like to offer his assistance. Protection, if you need it. I don't need protection from a stranger. You needed it this morning. Fair point. What does Marco want in return? Because nothing was free. Ava had learned that the hard way. Nothing. Vincent sounded sincere. He just wants to help. Why? You'd have to ask him. A rustle of paper. I'm texting you a number. You call it if Derek shows up again. Day or night, doesn't matter. Someone will answer. The line went dead. 3 seconds later, her phone buzzed with a text from the same unknown number. Just 7 digits, no name attached. Ava stared at it until her mother asked if everything was okay. Yeah, she lied. Everything's fine. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay on the pull-out couch, her mother had the bedroom, and listened to the building settle, the neighbors arguing through thin walls, the distant wail of sirens. At 2 a.m, she got up and checked the deadbolt for the 3rd time. At 2:15, she Googled Marco DeLuca. The results were sparse. A LinkedIn profile for a consultant, which told her nothing. A mention in a local business journal about a charitable donation. No Facebook, no Instagram, no digital footprint beyond the bare minimum. People who valued privacy, or people with something to hide. She was still awake when her phone rang at 2:47 a.m. Unknown number, but not the one Vincent had texted from. Her thumb hovered over the decline button. Then instinct, or maybe the memory of Derek's face in the diner, made her answer. Ava Carter? A different voice. Younger. Nervous. Who is this? There's a fire. Rosie's diner. I thought you should know. The line went dead before she could ask anything else. Ava threw on clothes, her heart hammering. She didn't wake her mother, didn't want to cause panic, just grabbed her keys and ran. The diner was 12 blocks away. She made it in 8 minutes, sprinting through empty streets while her lungs burned and her mind conjured worst-case scenarios. She smelled the smoke before she saw the flames. Rosie's diner was fully engulfed, fire pouring from the windows, black smoke billowing into the night sky. 3 fire trucks surrounded it, firefighters shouting orders, hoses spraying water that seemed to do nothing against the inferno. Ava stood on the sidewalk, her hand pressed to her mouth, watching 40 years of Rosie's life turn to ash. Nobody inside, thank God. A firefighter in turnout gear paused beside her. Building was empty. What happened? Arson. Accelerant poured through the mail slot, lit from outside. He studied her face. You work here? Yeah. I'm sorry. He moved away to help his crew. Ava's phone buzzed. Text from another unknown number. You're next, bitch. You and your mom. No signature needed. She knew who'd sent it. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped the phone. Derek had burned down Rosie's. Derek had destroyed the one place she'd felt safe, the one source of income keeping her and her mother housed and fed. And he wasn't done. She should call the police, should show them the text, file a report, add it to the pile of paperwork that had accomplished exactly nothing. Instead, she pulled up the number Vincent had sent. Her thumb hovered over the call button. This was the edge. The moment she either stepped back into the life she'd been trying to build, small and scared but hers, or forward into something unknown. The diner collapsed inward with a roar of timber and flame. Ava pressed call. It rang once. Vincent! He burned down the diner. Her voice broke. He's going to come after me, after my mother. Where are you? Outside Rosie's, watching it burn. Stay visible. Stay near the firefighters. I'm sending someone to you now. A pause. Ava? You did the right thing. She wasn't sure about that. 10 minutes later, a black SUV pulled up to the curb. The driver's window rolled down, revealing Vincent, 30-something, dark hair, expressionless face. Get in. I need to go home. My mother is already being secured. Marco sent a team to your apartment 5 minutes ago. She's safe. Vincent's eyes were steady. But you're not. Not out here in the open. So get in the car. Ava looked back at the burning diner, at the firefighters losing their battle against Derek's rage, at the life she'd tried to build going up in smoke. Then she got in the car. Vincent drove in silence through streets that blurred together, taking turns she didn't track because her brain had shut down somewhere between the phone call and the reality of what was happening. They pulled into an underground parking garage, descended 3 levels, and stopped beside an elevator with a keypad entry. Where are we? Somewhere safe. Vincent opened her door. Come on. The elevator required a 6-digit code and a thumbprint. It rose smoothly, without the grinding shudder of her apartment building's stairs, and opened into a penthouse that looked like something from a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, modern furniture in shades of gray and black, art on the walls that was probably expensive but looked like random paint splatters to Ava's untrained eye. Marco DeLuca stood by the windows, phone to his ear, speaking in rapid Italian. When he saw her, he ended the call. Ava, I'm glad you're safe. Where's my mother? The question came out sharper than intended, fear making her voice hard. In the guest room, sleeping. My people moved her here after you called Vincent. She has her medication, her oxygen, everything she needs. Marco approached slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. I'm sorry about the diner. Did you know Derek was going to do that? I suspected he might retaliate. I didn't know how or when. Marco's jaw tightened. I should have anticipated it. Should have had people watching him. Why do you care? The question she'd been afraid to ask at the diner, asked now because exhaustion had stripped away her filters. You don't know me. Don't owe me anything. Marco was quiet for a long moment. Then, my sister had a boyfriend like Derek. I was 17, she was 20. He put her in the hospital twice before I understood what was happening. The third time, I stopped him. How? Thoroughly. No elaboration, no details. Just that one word, delivered with the same flat calm he'd used in the diner. Ava understood. What happened to your sister? She got away, met someone good, built a life, has 3 kids now. Marco's expression softened slightly, but it took years for her to stop flinching at loud noises. Years to trust again, and I swore that if I ever saw someone in her position, I wouldn't look away. The explanation should have been reassuring. It wasn't, because men who intervened out of altruism didn't have underground parking garages and penthouse apartments and people who could relocate a sick woman in the middle of the night with military efficiency. What do you do, Marco? Ava asked. And don't say consultant. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I solve problems for people who can't solve them themselves. What kind of problems? The kind the police can't or won't handle. He moved to a bar cart and poured 2 glasses of something amber, offered her one. The kind that require resources and discretion. Ava didn't take the glass. Are you a criminal? That depends on your definition. Marco set the glass down. I operate in gray areas. I help people the system has failed. Sometimes that means bending rules. Sometimes it means breaking them. And what do you want from me in exchange for your help? Nothing. Bullshit. Ava's exhaustion transmuted into anger, hot and clarifying. Nobody does something for nothing. So what's the price? You want me in your bed? Want me owing you favors? What? Marco's expression hardened. I want Derek Hale to stop hurting you, that's all. Why? Because someone needs to. He drained his glass in one swallow. Your mother is in the second door on the left. You should sleep. We'll talk more in the morning. He walked away, disappearing into what was presumably his bedroom, leaving Ava alone in a stranger's penthouse with questions that had no good answers. She found her mother in a room that was bigger than their entire apartment, sleeping peacefully in a king-size bed with her oxygen tank humming beside her. Ava sat in the armchair by the window and watched the city lights blur through tears she'd been holding back for hours. The diner was gone. Her job was gone. Derek was escalating and the restraining order was worthless, and she just accepted help from a man who admitted to operating outside the law. But her mother was breathing easily for the first time in months, warm and safe in expensive sheets. Ava didn't sleep. She watched the sky lighten from black to gray to pale gold, and when her mother woke, she was there. Where are we? Elena's voice was clearer than usual, the oxygen concentration better in this room. Marco DeLuca's place. The guy from the diner. The one who helped you? Yeah. Ava helped her mother sit up, adjusted the oxygen tube. Derek burned down Rosie's last night, sent me a text threatening us, so I called Marco. Elena studied her daughter's face. And I don't know what happens next. Ava's voice cracked. I don't know who Marco really is. Don't know what helping us is going to cost, but Mom, I was so scared and I didn't know what else to do. Elena took her hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Sometimes the devil you don't know is better than the one you do. It wasn't comforting, exactly, but it was honest. Marco knocked an hour later, already showered and dressed in a different suit, charcoal gray, crisp white shirt, no tie. He looked like he'd slept 8 hours and had a professional stylist on staff. There's breakfast in the kitchen. We need to talk about next steps. Next steps. Like this was a business transaction. Maybe it was. Ava followed him to a kitchen that had marble countertops and appliances that probably cost more than she made in a year. Someone, Vincent maybe, had laid out coffee, pastries, fruit, eggs. Her stomach growled despite everything. Eat first, Marco said. Then we'll discuss the situation. The situation. Clinical. Removed. Ava poured coffee and forced down a croissant that tasted like air. Across the table, Marco scrolled through his phone with the focused attention of someone reading strategic briefings. Derek needs to be dealt with, he said finally, setting the phone aside. The question is how? The police won't do anything. You know that. Marco's tone was patient but firm. He violated your restraining order this morning, committed arson last night, sent you a direct threat. And if you go to the police, he'll be in holding for maybe 48 hours before he makes bail. Then he'll come after you harder. So what are you suggesting? Let me handle it. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Handle it how? Ava asked. You don't need to know the details. The hell I don't. This is my life, my problem. Marco leaned forward, his eyes hard. Derek Hale has been escalating for months. The diner was just the beginning. Next it'll be your car, then your apartment, then you or your mother or both. Men like him don't stop until they're forced to stop. And you're going to force him. Yes. By doing what? Beating him up? Scaring him? That didn't work this morning. This morning was a warning, Marco said quietly. Next time won't be. Ava's hands started shaking again. She set down her coffee before she spilled it. I don't want you to kill him. I'm not going to kill him. Marco's expression didn't change. But I am going to make sure he understands that touching you again will have consequences he can't recover from. That's still violence. Yes. No apology, no justification, just acknowledgement. Ava wanted to argue, wanted to insist there had to be another way, a legal way, a way that didn't involve Marco's gray areas and undefined consequences. But Derek's text was burned into her memory. You're next, bitch, and the diner was ash. I need to think about it, she said finally. You have until tonight. Marco stood, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced ease. Derek knows you're not at your apartment. He'll be looking for you. And when he finds out you're with me, he'll make his move. How do you know? Because that's what men like him do. They can't tolerate losing control. Marco's smile was cold, which is why we're going to give him exactly what he wants. What does that mean? It means you're going to be bait. Before Ava could respond, her phone rang. Unknown number again. She answered without thinking. Hello? Heavy breathing on the other end. Then, I know you're with him, that rich asshole from the diner. Derek. Her blood turned to ice. Doesn't matter, Derek continued, his voice slurred, drunk or high, she couldn't tell which. Doesn't matter where you hide. I'm gonna find you, Ava. Going to make you sorry you ever thought you could leave me. Derek, and your mom, that sick bitch who turned you against me, she's going to watch what I do to you before I... Marco plucked the phone from Ava's hand. His voice, when he spoke, was perfectly calm. Derek, this is Marco DeLuca. We met this morning. A pause while Derek presumably responded. No, I'm not fucking her, and you're not going to touch her. Here's what's going to happen instead. Ava couldn't hear Derek's response, but she could see Marco's expression shift, something dark and dangerous sliding behind his eyes. Tonight. Warehouse District, the old Barton Steel building. You know where that is? Another pause. Good. Come alone, and maybe you walk away. Bring friends, and this gets messy. Marco ended the call and handed the phone back to Ava. He'll be there. You just set up a meeting with my abusive ex-boyfriend. Ava's voice rose. What the hell are you thinking? I'm thinking we end this tonight, clean and final. By doing what? Fighting him in some abandoned warehouse? This isn't a movie, Marco. No, it's your life. He met her eyes, and for the first time she saw something beneath the calm, a carefully controlled rage that made her understand exactly why Derek had gone pale in the diner. And you deserve to live it without fear. Ava opened her mouth to argue, but the words died in her throat. Because he was right. She was so tired of being scared. What do you need me to do? She asked. Marco's smile was sharp as broken glass. Trust me. The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparation that felt surreal. Vincent arrived with 3 other men, all wearing the same neutral expression, all moving with the same quiet efficiency, and they transformed Marco's penthouse into a command center. Laptops appeared. Maps were printed. Weapons, actual guns, the kind Ava had only seen in movies, were cleaned and checked with casual familiarity that made her stomach churn. Her mother watched from the couch. Oxygen tube in place, eyes sharp despite her illness. You're sure about this? Elena asked when they were alone in the guest room. No. Ava sat beside her mother, their shoulders touching. But I'm more sure about this than I am about waiting for Derek to burn down our apartment with us inside. Marco seems capable. Marco seems dangerous. Maybe that's what you need right now. Elena covered Ava's hand with her own, her skin paper-thin and cool. Sometimes the only way to fight a monster is with another monster. Marco's not a monster. Isn't he? Elena's smile was sad. Baby, I know you want to see the good in people. You always have. But that man out there, he's got blood on his hands. Maybe it's justified blood. Maybe it's not. But it's there. Ava knew her mother was right. She also knew she was out of options. At 7 p.m., Marco knocked on the door. He changed into black jeans, black shirt, boots. Still looked expensive, but functional now, dressed for violence instead of board meetings. It's time. Ava stood. Her legs felt weak. You're staying here, Marco said to Elena. Vincent will be with you. Nothing gets past him. You bring my daughter back safe, Elena said, her voice carrying an edge Ava had never heard before. Or we're going to have problems. Marco's smile was genuine for the first time. Yes, ma'am. The drive to the warehouse district took 20 minutes through industrial streets lined with defunct factories and broken windows. Marco drove himself, a different car now, something low and fast and black, while 2 other vehicles followed at a distance. What's the plan? Ava asked as they pulled into the shadow of the Barton Steel building. Derek comes. I talked to him. He understands his options. Marco killed the engine. You stay in the car. No. He turned to look at her. Ava, he came after me. Threatened my mother. burned down my workplace. Her voice was steady now, fear transmuted into something harder. I deserve to face him. This isn't about what you deserve. It's about keeping you safe. I've been kept safe my whole life, locked in bathrooms, hiding in closets, running away in the middle of the night. Ava met his eyes. I'm done hiding. Marco studied her for a long moment. Then he reached under his seat and pulled out something small and black, a canister about the size of her thumb. Pepper spray. Industrial strength. You pointed at his face and pressed the button. Understand? She took it, the weight solid and reassuring in her palm. I understand. Stay behind me. If I tell you to run, you run. Don't argue. Don't hesitate. Just move. Okay. They got out of the car. The warehouse loomed above them, 6 stories of corroded metal and shattered glass. A single security light buzzed overhead, casting everything in sickly yellow. Derek's truck was already there. Ava's heart hammered against her ribs. Her fingers tightened on the pepper spray. Marco touched her shoulder, a brief grounding pressure, and then moved forward. Derek emerged from the shadows by the warehouse entrance. He'd brought a baseball bat. Couldn't help yourself, could you? Derek's gaze locked on Ava. Had to bring the bitch. She wanted to be here, Marco said. And I thought you should see what you're losing. Losing? Derek laughed, the sound jagged and wrong. I'm not losing shit. She's mine. Always has been. She was never yours. Marco's voice carried across the distance between them. And you know it. That's why you're so desperate to control her. Because deep down, you understand that without fear, she'd never stay. Derek's grip tightened on the bat. Fuck you. You have 2 choices, Marco continued, ignoring the outburst. Walk away tonight. Leave town. Change your name if you want. But you never contact Ava again. Never come within 100 miles of her, and you get to keep breathing. Or I make sure you can't hurt anyone ever again. Derek spat on the ground. You threatening me? I'm offering you mercy. Marco's tone didn't change. Take it. For a moment, just one suspended second, Ava thought Derek might actually do it. Might take the out Marco was offering and disappear into whatever hole violent men crawled into when they finally met someone more dangerous. Then Derek charged. The bat came down in a vicious arc aimed at Marco's head. Marco moved, faster than Ava's eyes could track, and the bat struck concrete where he'd been standing. Derek swung again. Marco caught his wrist, twisted, and the bat clattered to the ground. Last chance, Marco said. Derek headbutted him. Marco's nose crunched. Blood poured down his face, black in the security light, but his grip on Derek's wrist didn't loosen. Wrong choice. What happened next was brutal and efficient, and over in less than 30 seconds. Marco drove his knee into Derek's stomach, the same move from the diner, but harder now, no restraint. Derek folded. Marco released his wrist and hit him twice, once in the ribs, once in the jaw, with punches that sounded like meat hitting pavement. Derek went down. Marco stood over him, breathing hard, blood from his broken nose dripping onto Derek's shirt. You're done, Marco said. Understand? Done hurting her. Done destroying things. Done. Derek groaned something that might have been agreement. Marco turned to walk back to Ava, and Derek grabbed the bat. Marco! Ava screamed. Everything slowed. Derek swung. The bat arced toward Marco's spine. Marco spun, but not fast enough. Ava moved without thinking. She ran forward, the pepper spray clutched in her hand, and drove her thumb down on the button. The spray caught Derek full in the face. He screamed, dropping the bat, hands clawing at his eyes. Marco caught him by the throat and slammed him against the warehouse wall hard enough to crack the concrete. She saved your life, Marco said, his voice hoarse. Remember that. He hit Derek once more, a short, sharp punch to the temple, and Derek crumpled, unconscious. The silence that followed was broken only by Marco's labored breathing and Ava's heart pounding in her ears. Is he dead? She asked. No. Marco touched his nose gingerly, winced. But he'll wish he was when he wakes up. Headlights cut through the darkness. Vincent's SUV pulled up, followed by the other 2 vehicles. Clean this up, Marco told Vincent. Make sure he understands the terms when he comes to. What terms? He leaves. Tonight. And if he ever comes back... Marco didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Vincent nodded and gestured to his team. They moved with practiced efficiency, loading Derek's unconscious body into one of the cars. Marco took Ava's elbow. "Come on, let's get you home." Home. The word felt strange. They drove in silence. Marco held a cloth to his nose, his free hand steady on the wheel. Blood had soaked into his shirt collar, turning the black fabric darker. "Thank you," he said finally. "For what?" "The pepper spray. Good reflexes." Ava looked at her hands. They were shaking again. "I thought he was going to kill you." "He tried." Marco's smile was lopsided, his nose already swelling. "You stopped him." "What happens now?" "Now Derek gets a one-way ticket out of state. My people will make sure he goes. And if he's smart, he stays gone." "And if he's not smart?" Marco's expression darkened. "The next time, I won't show mercy." They pulled into the underground garage. The elevator ride up was silent. Her mother was waiting in the living room, Vincent standing guard by the window. When Elena saw Ava, relief flooded her face. "You're okay." "I'm okay." Ava hugged her mother carefully, mindful of the oxygen tube. "It's over." "Is it?" Elena studied Marco over Ava's shoulder. "Is he gone?" "He's gone," Marco confirmed. "And he won't be back." Elena nodded slowly. Then, to Ava's surprise, she said, "Thank you." Marco inclined his head. "Get some rest, both of you. We'll figure out next steps in the morning." Ava helped her mother back to the guest room, got her settled in bed with her medication and oxygen adjusted. When she returned to the living room, Marco was gone, presumably to clean up and deal with his broken nose. Vincent was still by the window. "He's a good man," Vincent said without looking at her. "Not a perfect man, but good." "What's the difference?" "Perfect men don't survive in this world." Vincent's smile was brief. "Good men do what's necessary and live with the consequences." Ava thought about that as she settled onto the couch, exhaustion finally catching up with her. She'd used pepper spray on Derek, had run toward violence instead of away from it, had trusted a stranger who admitted to operating outside the law, had survived. Sleep took her before she could decide if that made her good or perfect or something else entirely. Ava woke to the smell of coffee and the low murmur of voices speaking Italian. For a disoriented moment, she thought she was back in the studio apartment, her mother coughing in the next room, Derek's truck idling outside like a threat made metal. Then she opened her eyes and remembered. The penthouse, Marco's broken nose, Derek's unconscious body being loaded into a car. Her hands ached. She looked down and saw purple bruises blooming across her knuckles where she'd gripped the pepper spray canister. The physical evidence of last night felt surreal in the morning light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. She sat up slowly, her neck stiff from sleeping on the couch. Voices drifted from the kitchen, Marco and someone else. Their conversation rapid and heated in a language she didn't understand. When she padded barefoot into the kitchen, both men stopped talking. Marco stood by the espresso machine, a white bandage across his nose that made him look less like a businessman and more like a boxer between rounds. The other man was older, maybe 60, with silver hair and a face that had seen things people didn't talk about at dinner parties. "Ava." Marco's voice was rougher than usual, probably from the broken nose. "This is my uncle, Sal DeLuca." Sal studied her with eyes that missed nothing. "The waitress." Not a question, an assessment. "Former waitress," Ava corrected, sharper than she intended. "The diner burned down, remember?" Sal's mouth twitched. "She's got spine." "Good. You'll need it." "Need it for what?" Ava looked between them. "What's going on?" Marco poured espresso into a tiny cup, handed it to her. "Derek's in the hospital. Broken ribs, concussion, chemical burns to his eyes from the pepper spray." Her stomach dropped. "Will he be okay?" "Eventually." Marco's expression was unreadable. "But there's a problem." Of course there was. "He's talking to the police," Sal said bluntly, "claiming you and Marco assaulted him unprovoked. Says he came to the warehouse to talk and you attacked him." The espresso cup trembled in Ava's hand. "That's a lie. He came after us with a baseball bat." "We know that." Marco's jaw tightened. "But it's his word against ours, and he's in a hospital bed looking like a victim." "Oh, what about the arson? The threats he sent me?" "He's claiming the diner fire was an accident. Says someone must have broken in after hours." Sal pulled out his phone, scrolled through something. And the text came from a burner phone that's conveniently disappeared. Ava set down the espresso before she dropped it. So what happens now? Now the police want to talk to you, Marco said. Ask questions about last night. And depending on what you say, they might press charges. Against me? Against both of us. Marco moved closer and she could see the exhaustion around his eyes. But mostly me. Assault and battery. Possibly attempted murder, depending on how hard Derek's lawyer pushes. The room tilted. Ava grabbed the counter for support. This is insane. He's the one who... I know. Marco's hand covered hers, warm and steady. But the system doesn't care about what's fair. It cares about what can be proven in court. So we tell them the truth. Show them my restraining order, the texts, everything. Sal and Marco exchanged a look. What? Ava demanded. The truth is complicated, Sal said carefully. Marco took you to an abandoned warehouse in the middle of the night, beat a man unconscious, had his people dispose of the scene. None of that looks good under cross-examination. Derek attacked first. Can you prove it? Sal's tone wasn't unkind, just pragmatic. Any witnesses besides Marco's people? Any cameras? Any evidence that doesn't come from someone on our payroll? Ava's mouth went dry. No. Then we have a problem. Her mother appeared in the doorway, oxygen tank rolling beside her, face pale but determined. How bad? Bad enough. Marco pulled out a chair for Elena, waited until she was seated before continuing. If Derek follows through with the charges, I'm looking at 5 to 10 years. Ava might face obstruction charges for the pepper spray. Elena's hand found Ava's. What are our options? We can fight it in court. I have good lawyers. Marco leaned against the counter, arms crossed. But trials are expensive and unpredictable. And even if we win, the publicity would be problematic for my business. Or, Elena pressed, or Derek withdraws the complaint, says it was all a misunderstanding. Marco's smile was cold, which he'll do, if properly motivated. Ava knew what that meant. You're going to threaten him. I'm going to make him an offer he'd be stupid to refuse. Marco straightened. Money. Enough to disappear somewhere warm and start over. In exchange for a signed statement saying the warehouse incident was a mutual fight that got out of hand, and he doesn't want to press charges. You're going to pay him off. The words tasted bitter. I'm going to solve the problem. Marco met her eyes. Unless you have a better idea. She didn't. The truth was, Derek had backed them into a corner. The same system that had failed to protect her from his violence was now positioned to punish her for defending herself. It made her want to scream. How much money are we talking about? Elena asked. 50,000. Sal answered before Marco could. Plus medical expenses and relocation costs. Call it 75 all told. Ava's brain couldn't process that number. $75,000. More than she'd make in 3 years of waitressing, just handed over to the man who'd terrorized her. That's not fair, she said quietly. No. Marco's voice was gentle. It's not. But it ends this. Derek gets money and disappears. You get your life back, and nobody goes to prison. What if he takes the money and comes back anyway? He won't. The certainty in Marco's voice made her skin prickle. Because part of the deal is he understands what happens if he breaks it. Sal's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, frowned. The detective wants to interview Ava this afternoon, says it's voluntary, but refusing looks guilty. Marco scrubbed a hand over his face, careful of his broken nose. Okay, we'll cooperate. Ava, you need a lawyer present. I can't afford... I'll handle it. Marco was already texting someone. My attorney, Lisa Chen. She's good. She'll walk you through what to say and what not to say. Everything was moving too fast. Yesterday, she'd been a waitress trying to survive. Today, she was coordinating with lawyers and negotiating payoffs and learning how to navigate a legal system designed to fail people like her. I need air, Ava said abruptly. She walked to the windows overlooking the city. 12 stories below, people were starting their normal days. Going to work, buying coffee, living lives that didn't include warehouses and broken noses and police interviews. She'd never get that back. Even if Marco's plan worked, even if Derek took the money and vanished, She'd always know how close she'd come to losing everything. Her mother's wheelchair rolled up beside her. "You okay, baby?" "No." Ava's voice cracked. "I used pepper spray on a man, watched Marco beat him unconscious, and now I'm going to lie to the police so we don't go to jail." "You're going to tell the truth," Elena corrected. "Just strategically." "That's the same as lying." "No, lying would be saying Derek didn't attack you. The truth is he did. He came at you with a weapon, and you defended yourself." Elena's grip on her hand tightened. "Everything else is just details." Ava wanted to believe that. The lawyer arrived an hour later. Lisa Chen was 40-something, dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Ava's entire wardrobe, with sharp eyes that cataloged everything in 3 seconds. "You must be Ava." Lisa's handshake was firm. "Marco filled me in. Let's talk about your interview." They sat at Marco's dining table, glass and chrome, probably Italian, while Lisa pulled out a legal pad and started asking questions. "Walk me through your relationship with Derek Hale. Start from the beginning." Ava did. 2 years of dating that had started sweet and turned sour. The first time he'd grabbed her wrist too hard. The first slap. The escalation from words to fists to the night she'd finally left. Lisa took notes without expression. "The restraining order, when was it issued?" 6 months ago, October 15th. "And he violated it yesterday morning at the diner." "Yes." "Witnesses?" "Rosie Valdez. She owned the diner. Several customers. Marco was there too." "Good." Lisa made a check mark. "The fire. Did you see Derek at the scene?" "No, but he sent me a text afterward, threatening me and my mother." "Do you still have the text?" Ava pulled out her phone, found the message. "You're next, bitch. You and your mom." Lisa photographed it with her own phone. "This helps. What happened after you received this?" "I called the number Vincent gave me. Marco's associate. He picked me up from the fire scene and brought me here." "Why didn't you go to the police?" The question hung in the air. "Because they've never helped before," Ava said finally. "I filed 3 reports during my relationship with Derek. Nothing happened. He'd apologize, promise to change, and 2 weeks later I'd have new bruises." Lisa's expression softened slightly. "I understand, but the detective will ask the same question, and that answer makes it sound like you don't trust law enforcement." "I don't." "I know, but we need to frame it differently." Lisa tapped her pen against the pad. "You were in shock. Traumatized from seeing your workplace destroyed and receiving a death threat. You called someone you thought could help protect you in the immediate term, with the intention of filing a police report once you felt safe." It was the truth, technically, just polished and repositioned until it sounded reasonable instead of desperate. "What about the warehouse?" Ava asked. "What warehouse?" Ava blinked. "The meeting last night, where Derek called and threatened you again, and Marco, being concerned for your safety, suggested meeting in a neutral location to discuss the situation like adults." Lisa's tone was patient. "Derek showed up armed with a baseball bat. He attacked Marco. You used pepper spray to defend Marco from serious bodily harm. Is that accurate?" "Yes, but..." "No buts. That's what happened. Marco didn't lure Derek anywhere. Derek chose to come. Derek chose to bring a weapon. Derek chose violence." Lisa leaned forward. "The detective is going to try to make it sound like Marco orchestrated the whole thing. Don't let him put words in your mouth." Ava's head was spinning. What if they ask about Marco, about what he does? "You don't know what he does. He's a regular customer who helped you when your ex-boyfriend became violent. That's all." "They'll investigate him." "Let them." Lisa smiled thinly. "Marco's businesses are legitimate. His taxes are paid. His records are clean. They won't find anything actionable. Because Marco was smart. Because men who operated in gray areas knew how to keep the shadows from touching the light. They rehearsed for another hour." Lisa asked every question the detective might ask, corrected Ava's answers when they strayed into dangerous territory, drilled her until the story was smooth and consistent. By the time they finished, Ava felt like she'd been wrung out and hung to dry. "One more thing," Lisa said as she packed up her briefcase. "Don't volunteer information. Answer exactly what they ask, nothing more. Don't try to explain or justify. Just facts, delivered calmly." "What if I mess up?" "You won't." Lisa's confidence was absolute. And if things go sideways, I'll step in. That's what I'm there for. The police station was downtown, a concrete block that smelled like industrial cleaner and old coffee. The detective assigned to the case was named Ramirez, mid-40s, tired eyes, wedding ring worn thin from years of wear. He led them to an interview room that was exactly like every cop show Ava had ever seen. Table bolted to the floor, chairs that were uncomfortable on purpose, mirror that was probably two-way glass. Lisa sat beside her, briefcase open, legal pad ready. "Thanks for coming in, Ms. Carter." Ramirez settled into his chair with the ease of someone who'd conducted 1,000 interviews. "I just have a few questions about the incident last night." "My client is happy to cooperate," Lisa said smoothly. Ramirez's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm sure she is." He started with the basics. Name, address, relationship to Derek Hale. Ava answered each question the way Lisa had coached her. Brief, factual, no elaboration. "So Derek is your ex-boyfriend?" "Yes." "And you have a restraining order against him?" "Yes." "Why did you get the restraining order?" "Because he was violent. He hit me, threatened me. I was afraid for my safety." Ramirez made a note. "But yesterday morning, he came to your workplace." "Yes." "What happened?" Ava recited the story, Derek's arrival at the diner, his threats, Marco's intervention. She kept her voice level, her hands folded in her lap. "And then the diner burned down." "Yes." "You think Derek did that?" "I know he did. He sent me a text threatening me afterward." She showed him the screenshot Lisa had already forwarded to the department. Ramirez studied it. Burner phone, hard to trace. But the timing, circumstantial. He set down the phone. "Let's talk about last night. You went to an abandoned warehouse with Marco DeLuca." "Derek called and threatened me again. Marco suggested meeting him in person to resolve the situation. At midnight, in the warehouse district." "Derek chose the location and time." Ramirez's eyebrow lifted. "Did he?" Ava's pulse spiked. Lisa had warned her about this, the way cops twisted facts until guilty and innocent blurred together. "That's what Marco told me," Ava said carefully. "So you didn't hear Derek choose it?" "No." "You took Marco's word?" "Yes." "And when you got there, what happened?" "Derek had a baseball bat. He attacked Marco. I used pepper spray to stop him from killing Marco." "Killing him?" Ramirez leaned back. "That's a strong word." "He was hitting Marco in the head with a bat." Ava's composure cracked slightly. "What would you call it?" "I'd call it assault. But see, here's the thing, Ms. Carter." Ramirez folded his hands on the table. "Derek Hale is in the hospital with 3 broken ribs, a fractured skull, and chemical burns that might leave permanent damage to his vision. And his story is very different from yours. His story is a lie." "Maybe. Or maybe Marco DeLuca lured your ex to that warehouse and beat him half to death while you watched." "That's not—" Lisa touched her arm. "Detective, do you have evidence to support that theory? Because what I'm hearing is speculation based on the word of a man with multiple domestic violence complaints." "What I have," Ramirez said, "is a victim in the ICU and 2 suspects who benefit from his silence." "My client is not a suspect. She's a victim who defended herself and a friend from an armed attacker." Lisa's voice could have cut glass. "And unless you're planning to charge her with something, we're done here." Ramirez held Lisa's gaze for a long moment. Then he turned back to Ava. "One more question. What's your relationship with Marco DeLuca?" "He's a friend." "Just a friend?" "Yes." "Because it seems convenient. Your ex terrorizes you, and suddenly this wealthy businessman swoops in to save the day. Makes me wonder what you're giving him in return." The implication hit like a slap. "We're done." Lisa stood, and Ava followed. "If you have further questions, you can direct them to my office." They were at the door when Ramirez spoke again. "Derek Hale is a piece of shit. I read your file, Ms. Carter. 3 complaints, 2 hospital visits, 1 restraining order. System failed you." His voice was quieter now, almost gentle. "But Marco DeLuca isn't your savior. He's a predator in a nice suit, and whatever deal you've made with him, it's going to cost you more than you think." Ava wanted to argue, wanted to defend Marco, to explain that he'd helped when no one else would. Instead, she walked out. Lisa waited until they were in the parking lot before speaking. You did well. He thinks I'm Marco's whore. Ava's hands were shaking again. He thinks what cops always think when women make choices they don't approve of. Lisa unlocked her car, a sleek silver sedan that matched her suit. Forget him. Focus on the fact that you didn't incriminate yourself or Marco. What happens now? Now we wait. See if Derek takes the settlement. Lisa opened her door, paused. For what it's worth, Ramirez was right about one thing. Marco is dangerous, but sometimes dangerous is exactly what you need. The drive back to Marco's penthouse was silent. Vincent picked her up in the black SUV, his expression professionally neutral as always. When they arrived, Marco was in his office, a room Ava hadn't seen before, all dark wood and leather furniture. He was on the phone, speaking in rapid Italian again, but hung up when she entered. How did it go? He thinks you beat Derek for fun, and I'm your accomplice. Ava sank into one of the leather chairs. Also maybe your prostitute. Marco's jaw tightened. Ramirez has the imagination. He's not completely wrong though, is he? The words came out harsher than intended. You did beat Derek, and I did watch. You want me to apologize for stopping him? I want to understand what I'm part of now. Ava met his eyes, because that detective looked at me like I'd crossed a line I can't uncross. And maybe he's right. Marco was quiet for a long moment. Then he poured 2 glasses of whiskey from a crystal decanter and handed her one. When I was 17, my sister's boyfriend put her in the hospital. Ruptured spleen, broken jaw, internal bleeding. He swirled the whiskey, watching light refract through amber liquid. The police arrested him. He made bail in 6 hours. 2 days later, he showed up at her apartment with flowers and apologies. What happened? I happened. Marco's smile was bitter. I waited outside his work, followed him home, and I made sure he understood that if he ever came near my sister again, they'd find him in pieces. Did he listen? He moved to Nevada the next week. Marco drank. But here's the thing, Ava. I didn't feel bad about it, didn't lose sleep, because some people only understand violence, and if you're not willing to speak their language, they'll destroy you. Ava sipped her whiskey. It burned going down. So you became the thing you hated. No, I became the thing people like my sister needed. He set down his glass. There's a difference. Is there? You tell me. Would you rather I'd let Derek walk away from that diner? Let him burn down your home next? Let him hurt your mother? No. Then stop questioning the methods that kept you alive. It should have sounded arrogant. Instead, it just sounded tired. Ava's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Settlement accepted. Statement signed. You're clear. She showed it to Marco. His expression didn't change, but something in his shoulders relaxed. It's over. Just like that? Just like that. He took the phone, forwarded the message to Lisa. Derek gets his money, you get your freedom, everyone walks away. Except they didn't. Not really. Derek walked away $75,000 richer. Marco walked away having spent that money like pocket change. And Ava walked away knowing exactly what kind of man had saved her life. What now? She asked. Now you figure out what comes next. Marco leaned against his desk. The diner's gone. Your apartment lease ends next month. You need income, a plan. I'm working on my GED. I was thinking maybe EMT training after that. First responder. Marco nodded. Makes sense. Why? Because you ran toward danger to save me, not away from it. His smile was genuine. That's who you are. Might as well get paid for it. The compliment warmed something in her chest that had been cold for a long time. EMT training costs money I don't have, she admitted. So we'll figure it out. Marco pulled out his phone, started typing. I know people, scholarships, programs, connections. Give me a few days. Why are you helping me? The question hung between them. Because I can, Marco said simply. And because you remind me of my sister, strong enough to survive but convinced you have to do it alone. Maybe I do. Maybe. He pocketed his phone. Or maybe accepting help doesn't make you weak, just makes you human. Ava wanted to believe him. Her mother was in the living room when she emerged, watching the news with the sound muted. The headline showed the diner, still smoldering, yellow tape across the parking lot. "They're saying it was an electrical fire," Elena said without looking away from the screen. "No mention of arson." "Derek's lawyer probably negotiated that." Ava sat beside her mother. "He signed the settlement. It's over." "Is it?" Elena turned off the TV. "Baby, I know you think this ends with Derek gone, but Marco, what about him? He's not going to let you just walk away. Men like him don't help people out of kindness. They help because it creates obligation. He hasn't asked for anything. Yet." Elena's hand found hers. "Just be careful, please." Ava promised, even though she wasn't sure what being careful meant anymore. That night, she couldn't sleep again. She lay on the couch, staring at shadows on the ceiling, replaying the detective's words. "Marco DeLuca isn't your savior. He's a predator in a nice suit. But predators didn't pay for her mother's medication, didn't offer to help with EMT training, didn't break their own nose defending waitresses from violent ex-boyfriends. Did they?" She was still awake when Marco emerged from his bedroom, dressed in running clothes despite it being 3 a.m. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. "Too much in my head." "Come on." He gestured toward the door. "Fresh air helps." They took the elevator down to the garage, then up a different shaft that opened onto the roof. The city spread out below them, a galaxy of lights that made the sky invisible. Marco leaned against the railing, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. "This is where I come when things get heavy." "Does that happen a lot?" "More than I'd like." He glanced at her. "You did good today." "With the detective." "I lied." "You survived." Marco's voice was firm. "Don't confuse the two." Ava hugged herself against the cold. "What if Ramirez was right? What if I've made a deal I don't understand?" "Then unmake it." Marco turned to face her fully. "You want to leave, go back to your apartment, figure things out on your own. I'll help you get set up somewhere Derek can't find you, and we never speak again." The offer was genuine. She could hear it in his voice. "Or," she asked, "or you stay. Let me help you build something better than what you had before." He moved closer, and she could see the bruising around his broken nose. "Not because you owe me, but because you deserve a chance to become who you're meant to be. And what do you get out of it?" "The satisfaction of watching you succeed." His smile was crooked. "Is that so hard to believe?" "Yes," her brain said. "No," her mouth said. They stood there in the cold for a while longer, not talking, just breathing the same air and watching the city refuse to sleep. When they finally went back inside, Ava felt something shift. Not trust, exactly. More like the possibility of it. The next morning brought flowers. 3 dozen roses delivered to the penthouse, with a card that made Ava's blood run cold. "Enjoy your blood money, bitch. This isn't over. No signature." Didn't need one. Marco read the card once, his expression going flat and dangerous. Then he made a phone call in Italian that lasted 30 seconds and ended with him crushing the card in his fist. "I thought he signed the settlement," Ava said, her voice small. "He did." Marco dropped the crumpled card in the trash. "This is just him trying to have the last word." "What if it's more than that?" "Then we'll handle it." The certainty in his voice should have been comforting. It wasn't, because Ava was starting to understand that Derek's kind of hate didn't have an expiration date. It just waited, festering, until it found another opening. And next time, $75,000 might not be enough to make it disappear. The flowers went into the trash, vase, and all. Marco made another call while Ava stood by the window, watching her mother sleep in the guest room through the half-open door. Elena's chest rose and fell with mechanical regularity, the oxygen machine doing work her lungs couldn't manage anymore. "How long?" Ava asked when Marco hung up. "How long what?" "Before Derek breaks the agreement." She didn't turn around. "Days? Weeks?" "He won't." But Marco's voice carried less certainty than before. "The settlement was ironclad. He violates it. He loses everything and faces charges for the arson and assault." "You think a legal contract scares him?" Now she did turn, and the look on Marco's face told her he'd been thinking the same thing. "He sent flowers to your address, Marco. He knows where we are." "He knows where I am. That's different." Marco moved to the bar cart, poured coffee instead of whiskey this time. "This building has security, cameras, guards, controlled access. He can't get to you here." I can't live in your penthouse forever. Why not? The question caught her off guard. Because it's your home. Because my mother needs her own space. Because I can't just exist in your world like some kind of charity case. Marco handed her a coffee mug. You're not a charity case. You're someone rebuilding after trauma. There's a difference. Is there? Ava wrapped her hands around the mug, letting the heat ground her. Because from where I'm standing, I've traded Derek's cage for yours. Different bars, same trapped feeling. Something flickered across Marco's face. Hurt, maybe, or recognition. You're free to leave any time. I've said that. With what money? What plan? My job burned down, remember? The bitterness in her voice surprised her. You've been generous, and I'm grateful, but generosity comes with strings, always. What strings have I attached? I don't know yet. That's what scares me. They stood in silence, the city waking up beyond the windows. Somewhere down there, people were living normal lives, getting coffee, complaining about traffic, worrying about normal things like mortgage payments and whether their kids were doing okay in school. Ava couldn't remember what normal felt like. Her phone rang. Rosie's number. Ava, honey. Rosie's voice was rough, like she'd been crying or smoking or both. I heard about Derek, about the settlement. How did you? Small town, baby. People talk. A pause. You okay? I don't know. Ava walked to the far corner of the living room, lowering her voice. The diner is insured. I'll rebuild. Rosie's conviction was absolute. Question is, will you come back when I do? I don't think I can waitress anymore, Rosie. Didn't ask if you could. Asked if you would. Another pause, heavier this time. That man you're staying with, Marco. You trust him? Ava glanced at Marco, who was pretending not to listen while obviously listening. I'm not sure trust is the right word. Then what is? Necessary. Maybe. She turned away. He's helping me and my mom. That's all I know. Help ain't always help, Ava. Sometimes it's a leash made of good intentions. Rosie sighed. But you're a smart girl. You'll figure it out. And when you do, you call me. Diner or no diner, you've got family here. The call ended and Ava stood holding the phone, blinking back tears she didn't want Marco to see. Bad news? He asked. Rosie's rebuilding. Wants to know if I'll come back. Will you? Would you let me? Marco's expression hardened. I'm not keeping you prisoner, Ava. If you want to go back to waitressing, to your old life, to pretending Derek won't find another way to hurt you, that's your choice. That's not fair. None of this is fair. He set down his coffee with enough force to slosh it over the rim. You think I wanted to spend 75 grand buying off your abuser? You think I enjoy having Vincent run security on a waitress because some asshole can't take no for an answer? Then why are you doing it? Because somebody has to. The words came out louder than intended, and Marco stopped, visibly reining himself in. Because the system failed you. Because people like Derek don't stop until they're made to stop. And because... He trailed off. Because what? Ava pressed. Because I couldn't save my sister in time. His voice dropped. She survived, yeah. But she's different now. Jumpy. Can't handle crowds. Has panic attacks when men raise their voices. And I have to live with knowing I could have stopped it sooner if I'd just paid attention. The admission hung between them, raw and honest. I'm not your sister, Ava said quietly. I know. And you can't fix her by fixing me. I know that too. Marco scrubbed a hand over his face, careful of his still healing nose. But I can make sure you have options she didn't. Can make sure when you walk away from here, it's because you chose to, not because some bastard forced you. Ava wanted to argue, wanted to point out the holes in his logic, the savior complex wrapped in good intentions. But the exhaustion in his eyes stopped her. He meant it, all of it. That scared her more than anything else. Vincent appeared in the doorway, his timing impeccable as always. We have a problem. Marco straightened. What kind? Derek's missing. Checked out of the hospital against medical advice around 4 a.m. His truck's gone, apartment's empty, and he's not answering his phone. The coffee mug slipped from Ava's hands. It shattered on the marble floor, brown liquid spreading like a stain. When? Marco's voice was ice. Hospital noticed around 6, called his emergency contact, his brother, who checked the apartment an hour ago. Vincent's expression didn't change. He's in the wind. $75,000 and he runs? Marco's laugh was bitter. He really is stupider than I thought. Or smarter. Vincent pulled out his phone, showed them something. He withdrew the money, all of it, cash, then disappeared. Ava's legs felt weak. She grabbed the back of the couch for support. He's coming for us. He's coming for something. Marco was already moving, pulling out his own phone. Vincent, I want eyes on every property connected to Derek. His brother's place, his mother's house, the bar he drinks at. And get someone to Ava's old apartment. Already done. Building's clear, no sign of forced entry. What about her mother's doctor? Her pharmacy? Vincent was typing. On it. Elena appeared in the doorway, oxygen tank trailing behind her. What's happening? Derek's gone. Ava moved to her mother, helped her to the couch. Took the settlement money and ran. Ran where? That's what we're trying to figure out. Marco's phone was already ringing. He answered in Italian, his voice clipped and commanding. Elena's hand found Ava's. He's not running. He's planning. You don't know that. Baby, I was married to your father for 15 years before the cancer took him. I know men, and men like Derek, they don't take money and disappear. They take money and buy weapons. The observation landed like lead in Ava's stomach. Marco ended his call. I've got people checking gun stores, pawn shops, anywhere he might buy firepower. But Elena's right. He's not running. He's escalating. So what do we do? Ava heard the tremor in her own voice and hated it. We prepare. Marco's jaw was set. Vincent, I want full security protocol. No one in or out of this building without clearance. Camera feeds monitored 24/7. And get me Tony's team. Tony's in Miami. Then get him out of Miami. Marco's tone left no room for argument. I need people I trust, and I need them now. The rest of the morning blurred together. Men arrived, 6 of them, all with Vincent's same neutral expression and efficient movements. They swept the penthouse, installed additional cameras, checked sight lines from surrounding buildings. Ava watched from the couch, her mother beside her, as Marco's world unfolded in real time. This wasn't a businessman consulting. This was a general preparing for war. You've done this before, she said when Marco paused near them. More times than I'd like. He knelt so he was eye level with Elena. Mrs. Carter, I need to ask you something. Do you have any family outside the city? Somewhere you could stay for a few weeks? Elena's laugh turned into a cough that took 30 seconds to subside. When she could breathe again, she said, My sister's in Phoenix, but I'm not leaving my daughter. Mom, no. Elena's voice was firm despite her damaged lungs. I spent 60 years watching women run from their problems. I'm not running from yours. This isn't her problem, Marco said. It's mine now. The hell it is. Elena's eyes blazed. That boy terrorized my baby for 2 years, burned down her workplace, threatened to kill us both. This stopped being just Ava's problem the second he put his hands on her. Marco studied Elena for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay. But you follow security protocols. No leaving the penthouse without escort. No answering the door. No. I've got cancer, not dementia. Elena waved him off. I know how to stay alive. One of Marco's men, Tony, apparently back from Miami, approached with a tablet. Got something. The screen showed security footage from a gas station. Derek's truck pulling up to pump 7. Derek himself climbing out, moving with the careful stiffness of someone with broken ribs. When was this? Marco demanded. 2 hours ago. Station's about 40 miles west of here. Tony swiped to the next image. He paid cash, bought cigarettes, and a road map. A map? Who uses paper maps anymore? Someone who doesn't want their phone GPS tracked. Tony zoomed in on Derek's face. He's got a black duffel in the passenger seat. Couldn't see what's in it, but the way he's carrying it suggests weight. Weapons. Vincent appeared beside them. I checked with his known associates. Derek's cousin works at a sporting goods store. Inventory shows 3 hunting rifles and a shotgun sold yesterday for cash. No background check because the cousin classified them as store use. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. So he's armed, mobile, and planning something. Marco's voice was flat. Any indication where he's headed? Tony shook his head. Map was folded. Couldn't see which region he was looking at. Ava stood abruptly. I know where he's going. Everyone turned to look at her. My mother's sister, in Phoenix. Ava's mind was racing. Derek knows about her. He used to joke about how we'd go visit someday, how Arizona was too hot, but the family obligation meant we'd suffer through it. You think he's going after your aunt? Marco's expression darkened. I think he's making a point. Ava's hands clenched into fists. He can't get to us here, so he'll go after anyone connected to us. Show us that nowhere is safe. Elena's face had gone pale. Sarah. I need to call Sarah. No. Marco put a hand on her shoulder. We can't risk tipping him off that we know. Vincent, get me everything on Sarah. What's her last name? Mitchell. Sarah Mitchell. Elena was already reaching for her phone, but Vincent gently intercepted it. Ma'am, if Derek's monitoring calls, you contact her and he'll know we're on to him. Vincent's voice was kind but firm. Let us handle it. That's my sister! And we'll protect her. Marco was already typing on his phone. I've got people in Phoenix. They'll get to her before Derek does. You've got people everywhere, don't you? Ava's voice came out sharper than intended. Marco looked up. Yes. And right now, you should be grateful for that. He wasn't wrong. Tony coordinated with someone named Miguel in Phoenix while Vincent pulled up Sarah Mitchell's address, workplace, known routines. Within 20 minutes, they had a full profile and a protection detail en route. She works at a library, Tony reported. Lives alone in a gated community. Drives a '08 Honda Civic. Gated community is good, Marco said. But Derek's shown he's willing to destroy property to make a point. Make sure Miguel's team understands the threat level. Already briefed. Tony's phone buzzed. They're at her house now. She's safe. Elena sagged with relief. But Ava's mind was elsewhere. Puzzle pieces clicking together in a pattern she didn't like. If he's not going after my aunt, where is he going? The question hung in the air. Vincent pulled up a map on the large monitor mounted on the wall. Gas station was here, 40 miles west. If he continues in that direction, he traced a line with his finger. It ran straight through empty highway, rural communities, and eventually to the coast. There's nothing out there, Marco said. No family? No connections? Why go west? Unless west isn't the destination. Ava moved closer to the screen. Show me the gas station footage again. Tony pulled it up. Ava studied Derek's face, the way he moved, the set of his shoulders. He's scared, she said finally. What? Look at him. He's checking over his shoulder every few seconds, moving fast. That's not confidence. That's fear. Ava turned to Marco. You scared him at the warehouse. Scared him so badly he took the money and ran. West isn't a destination. It's just a way. You think he's actually running? Vincent sounded skeptical. I think he knows he's in over his head. Ava's certainty grew as she spoke. Derek's a bully, not a soldier. He hits women and burns down diners because those are targets that can't fight back. But you? Your people? He saw what that world looks like, and he wants no part of it. Marco was quiet for a moment. So the flowers this morning, a last middle finger before he disappears forever. Ava felt the knot in her chest loosen slightly. He took your money and ran because staying means dying. Maybe. Marco didn't sound convinced. Or maybe he's regrouping, buying weapons and getting distance before he makes his move. Either way, he's no longer an immediate threat. Vincent closed the tablet. We maintain security protocols, keep monitoring, but we don't chase. We should chase. Tony's voice was hard. Put him down before he can regroup. No. The word came from Ava, surprising even herself. No more violence. If he's running, let him run. I just want this over. Marco studied her face. And if he comes back? Then you do what you have to do. Ava met his eyes. But I'm not going to become like him, someone who solves everything with fear and pain. That's not who I want to be. The room was silent except for the hum of electronics. Finally, Marco nodded. Okay, we track but don't engage. Derek gets his head start. But the second he turns back toward the city, all bets are off. It felt like a reprieve. Temporary, conditional, but real. The security team dispersed, some staying to monitor, others leaving to coordinate surveillance. Elena retreated to the guest room, exhausted from the morning's drama, and Ava found herself alone with Marco in his office. "You handled that well," he said. "I'm terrified." "I know, but you didn't let it paralyze you." Marco poured 2 glasses of water, handed her one. "That's strength. Feels more like survival." "Sometimes they're the same thing." He leaned against his desk. "What do you want, Ava? Really want if Derek's gone and you could do anything?" The question caught her off guard. "I told you, EMT training." "Why?" "Because," she paused, trying to articulate something she'd only felt, never spoken. "Because when everything went to hell at that warehouse, I didn't freeze. I moved. And it felt right, like that's what I'm supposed to do. Run toward danger. Help people in danger, there's a difference." Ava set down the water. "My whole life, I've been the person who needed saving. I want to be the person who does the saving." Marco's smile was genuine. "Then that's what you'll be." "Just like that?" "Just like that." He pulled out his phone, started scrolling. "I meant what I said about connections. Give me a week, and I'll have you enrolled in a program. Tuition covered, books paid for, everything." "Why would you do that?" "Because watching you succeed costs me nothing and gives you everything." Marco looked up. "And because someone should have done it for my sister, but nobody did." There it was again. The ghost of his sister's trauma, driving every decision he made. "What's her name?" Ava asked. "Your sister." "Maria." Something in Marco's expression softened. "She's 33 now, married to a high school teacher, has 3 kids who call me Uncle Marco and ask me to fix their bikes." "Does she know what you do? The gray areas and the violence?" "She suspects. We don't talk about it." Marco pocketed his phone. "She's built a life that doesn't include my world. And I'm glad. Someone in the family should be clean." "You're not dirty." "I'm not clean either." He moved to the window, hands in his pockets. "I've hurt people, Ava. Not just Derek. People who threaten my business, my family, my interests. And I'd do it again without hesitation. That doesn't make you a monster. Doesn't make me a hero either." He turned to face her. "I'm just a man who decided a long time ago that some things are worth fighting for, even if the fight gets ugly." Ava understood. Maybe not fully, maybe not without reservations, but enough to know that Marco's moral universe operated on rules that made sense to him, even if they didn't align with the law. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. The protection, the money, She gestured vaguely. "All of it." "You're welcome." Marco's smile was tired. "Now go be with your mother. She needs you more than I do." Ava left him standing by the window, silhouetted against the city skyline like a figure from a movie about complicated men making difficult choices. 3 days passed with no sign of Derek. The security footage showed him moving steadily west, stopping at motels paid for in cash, eating at roadside diners where cameras were sparse or non-existent. He was doing exactly what Ava predicted, running. Lisa Chen called with good news. The district attorney had declined to pursue charges against Marco or Ava, citing insufficient evidence in Derek's signed statement. The case was closed. Rosie called too, her voice bright with plans. The insurance had come through, and she was rebuilding the diner bigger than before. She wanted Ava there for the grand reopening, even if she wasn't coming back to work. Life, somehow, was trying to return to normal. Ava spent her days studying for the GED test Marco had arranged for her to take in 2 weeks. Her mother's health stabilized with better medication and consistent oxygen therapy. And Marco disappeared into his work, whatever that actually was, leaving early and returning late. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, it felt like waiting for the other shoe to drop. On the 4th day, Vincent knocked on the guest room door, where Ava was helping her mother with physical therapy exercises. "Got a minute?" he asked. They reconvened in Marco's office. Tony was there too, along with another man Ava didn't recognize. "This is Carlos," Marco said by way of introduction. "He works surveillance." Carlos nodded, opened a laptop. "Derek's trail went cold yesterday morning. Last ping was at a motel outside Bakersfield. He checked out, got in his truck, and vanished." "Vanished how?" Ava asked. No credit card usage, no gas station cameras, no motel registrations. It's like he ceased to exist. Carlos pulled up a map showing Derek's route. He could have gone north, south, or doubled back east. We have no way of knowing. Or he dumped the truck and bought something else, Tony added. Cash purchase, no registration. He could be driving anything now. Marco's jaw tightened. So we've lost him. For now. Vincent's expression was carefully neutral. Could be he's still running. Could be he's planning. Won't know until he surfaces again. And when he does, we'll be ready. Tony's confidence was absolute. But Ava saw the tension in Marco's shoulders, the way his fingers drummed against the desk. He didn't like uncertainty. Didn't like threats he couldn't track. What do we do in the meantime? She asked. We live our lives. Marco's voice was firm. You study for your GED. Your mother continues her treatment. I go back to work, and we all stay alert. It sounded reasonable. It felt like tempting fate. That night, Ava couldn't sleep. She lay on the couch, still refusing to take Marco's bedroom despite his offers, and stared at the ceiling, her mind churning through worst-case scenarios. Derek with a rifle, watching the building from across the street. Derek breaking into the underground garage. Derek finding a way past the security and the cameras and the men with guns. Derek not running at all, just waiting. She must have dozed off because the next thing she knew, someone was shaking her shoulder. Ava, wake up. Marco's voice, urgent. She jolted awake. What? What's wrong? Get your mother. We need to leave, now. Why? What happened? Marco was already moving, pulling on a jacket, checking his phone. Fire alarm just went off in the parking garage. Security cameras show smoke. It could be nothing, or it could be Derek. Ava's heart stopped. He's here? I don't know, but we're not staying to find out. Marco was at Elena's door knocking. Mrs. Carter, we need to go. The next 10 minutes were chaos. Elena struggling into her wheelchair, the oxygen tank secured, Ava grabbing essentials while Marco coordinated with Vincent over the phone. The elevator ride down was silent, except for Elena's labored breathing. When the doors opened to the garage, smoke was visible, curling from somewhere near the west wall. 2 of Tony's men were already there, fire extinguishers deployed. The source of the smoke was clear. Someone had set a pile of old newspapers and cardboard on fire near one of the support pillars. Arson? Marco demanded. Looks like it. One of the men held up a gas can. This was found nearby. Security footage shows a figure in a hoodie entering through the service entrance about 20 minutes ago. Where are they now? Gone. Left the same way they came in. Marco's expression was murderous. Show me the footage. They huddled around a tablet while the video played. A figure in dark clothes and a hood, face obscured, moving quickly through the garage. They set the fire, dropped the gas can, and vanished. That's not Derek, Ava said. How do you know? Wrong build, wrong walk. She pointed at the screen. Derek's 6'1", maybe 200 pounds. This person is smaller, shorter. Marco rewound the footage, studied it. She's right. This is someone else. So Derek hired someone, Vincent suggested. Maybe. Or this is unrelated vandalism. Marco didn't sound convinced. Either way, we can't stay here tonight. Vincent, get us to the safe house. Safe house? Ava repeated. I own property all over the city. This isn't the only place I can go. Marco was already guiding Elena's wheelchair toward a black SUV that had appeared from somewhere. Come on. They drove through empty streets, Vincent behind the wheel, Tony in the passenger seat, Marco and Ava bracketing Elena in the back. Nobody spoke. The safe house turned out to be a 2-story townhouse in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place families lived in and nobody looked twice at. Vincent unlocked the door with a key from a hidden lockbox, and they filed inside. It was furnished simply: couch, table, beds upstairs, kitchen stocked with non-perishables. Functional, but impersonal. You'll be safe here, Marco said as Vincent swept the house room by room. No connection to me in any public records. Off the grid. For how long? Elena asked. As long as it takes. Marco's phone rang. He checked the screen, frowned. I need to take this. He stepped outside, leaving Ava and her mother alone in the living room. This isn't sustainable, Elena said quietly. I know. Running from safe house to safe house, waiting for Derek to make his move. Elena's breathing was ragged despite the oxygen. This isn't a life, baby. What else can we do? Fight back, really fight back, not with Marco's money or his men, with the law, with the system, with everything we've got. The system failed us, Mom. You know that. So we make it work harder. Elena's eyes were fierce despite her weakened body. We get lawyers, restraining orders that mean something, police protection. We do it the right way. But the right way doesn't work against men like Derek. And Marco's way? Elena gestured at the safe house. Look where that's gotten us. Hiding in strangers' houses, jumping at shadows, depending on a man we barely know. Ava wanted to argue, but the words stuck in her throat because her mother was right. They'd traded one form of captivity for another. Different captor, but still captive. Marco returned, his expression grim. That was Carlos. Security footage from 3 other properties I own showed the same figure in a hood, setting small fires, spray painting threats, breaking windows. All tonight? Vincent asked. All in the last 2 hours. Marco's hands curled into fists. This is coordinated. This is a message. From Derek? From someone. Marco started pacing. Question is what they want. Money? Revenge? Attention? Ava's phone buzzed. Unknown number again. Her hands shook as she answered. Hello? Hey, bitch. Derek's voice slurred and angry. Enjoying the fireworks? Everyone in the room went still. Where are you, Derek? Ava forced her voice to stay level. Somewhere you'll never find me, but I found your boyfriend's buildings real easy. He laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Thought you could buy me off? Thought 75 grand would make me forget what you did? What I did? You... Shut up! The shout made her flinch. You made me look weak, made me run, so now I'm going to make you pay. By setting fires? Ava's fear transmuted into anger. You're just proving you're exactly what everyone knows you are. A coward who can't handle rejection. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that she thought he'd hung up. Then, I've got something you want. Ava's blood turned to ice. What are you talking about? Your mom's sister, Sarah, right? Lives in Phoenix, works at a library, drives a piece of shit Honda? You're lying, but her voice cracked. Am I? Derek's laugh was triumphant. Check with your boyfriend's people in Phoenix. Ask them where Sarah was at 10 p.m. tonight. The call ended. Marco was already on the phone with Miguel before Ava could speak. The conversation was brief and brutal. When he hung up, his face was ashen. Sarah Mitchell left her house around 9 to pick up groceries. Never came home. Her car was found abandoned at a shopping center. Purse still inside, phone smashed. Elena made a sound like a wounded animal. No, 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 no. He has her. Ava's voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. He took her to get to us. We don't know that, but Marco's tone said otherwise. Miguel's team is searching the area, checking cameras, interviewing witnesses. Ava's phone buzzed again. Text message from Derek's number. A photo loaded slowly. Sarah Mitchell, bound to a chair, duct tape over her mouth, terror in her eyes. Behind her, a concrete wall covered in graffiti. No identifying details, no clues to location. Below the photo, you have 12 hours. Come alone or she dies. I'll send the address at dawn. Ava's legs gave out. She collapsed onto the couch, the phone slipping from her numb fingers. Marco picked it up, read the message, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw genuine fear in his eyes. We'll get her back, he said. I swear to you, we'll get her back. But the promise sounded hollow, because Derek wasn't running anymore. He was hunting. Elena's scream tore through the safe house like something primal and broken. Her oxygen tube tangled as she tried to stand, her legs buckling, and Ava caught her before she hit the floor. Sarah, oh God. Sarah, Mom, breathe. Please breathe. Ava held her mother upright, felt the fragile bird bone weight of her, the way her whole body shook. We'll get her back. We will. But Elena was beyond hearing. Her sobs came in gasps that her damaged lungs couldn't sustain, and within seconds she was coughing so hard blood flecked her lips. Marco moved fast, helping Ava get Elena onto the couch, adjusting the oxygen flow. Mrs. Carter, I need you to slow down. In through your nose, out through your mouth. My sister. He has my sister. And we're going to get her back. Marco's voice carried absolute conviction. But I need you functional. Ava needs you functional. Can you do that? The question cut through Elena's panic. She nodded, still crying but breathing more steadily, and Ava held her hand so tight her own fingers went numb. Vincent was already on his phone, coordinating with Miguel's team in Phoenix. Tony had a laptop open, pulling up satellite imagery and traffic cameras. And Marco stood in the center of the room like the eye of a hurricane, making decisions with the speed of someone who'd done this before. Carlos, I need you to trace that photo. Metadata. Anything that tells us where it was taken. He moved to the window, checking the street outside. Vincent, get me everything on Derek's known associates. Family, friends, anyone he might have reached out to for help. Most of his friends are local, Vincent said, but his brother Kyle lives in Phoenix. The room went silent. His brother's in Phoenix? Ava's voice was barely a whisper. Has been for 3 years. Works construction, lives in a rental near Tempe. Vincent was already pulling up the address. We dismissed him as a connection because Derek and Kyle haven't spoken in over a year. Bad blood over money. Check it anyway. Marco's jaw was set. Bad blood doesn't mean Derek wouldn't use him, especially if he offered cash. Miguel called back within 5 minutes. Kyle Hale's house is dark, trucks in the driveway, but nobody's answering the door. I've got eyes on it. Want me to go in? Marco looked at Ava. Your call. My call? It's your aunt. Your decision. His expression was unreadable. We can wait for the address Derek promised at dawn, or we can move now based on a guess. But if we're wrong, we tip our hand and he might panic. Ava looked at the photo on her phone, Sarah's terrified eyes, the duct tape, the concrete wall. Go in, she said. Now. Marco relayed the order. Then they waited. Waiting was worse than anything. Every second stretched like taffy while Ava held her mother and watched the clock tick toward midnight. Elena had gone quiet. Her crying dried up, replaced by a hollow-eyed shock that scared Ava more than the hysteria. She's 62, Elena said to no one in particular. She's got arthritis and high blood pressure, and she's terrified of violence. Can't even watch crime shows on TV. She's strong. Ava didn't know if it was true, but she needed to say something. She'll hold on. For how long? Elena turned to look at her daughter. How long before Derek hurts her just to prove he can? Ava had no answer. Marco's phone rang. He answered, listened, and his expression darkened. Understood. Fall back and maintain surveillance. When he hung up, the news was written on his face. Kyle's house is empty. No sign of Sarah, no sign of Derek. Place looks like it hasn't been occupied in days. Marco rubbed his eyes. Miguel's canvassing neighbors, but it's a dead end. So we wait for dawn. Tony closed his laptop. Wait for Derek to send the address, and walk into whatever trap he's set. Vincent didn't bother making it sound like anything other than what it was. Marco moved to the window again, his silhouette dark against the streetlights. He wants Ava to come alone. That's the demand. Absolutely not. Vincent's voice was flat. It's suicide. It's also non-negotiable. Marco turned back to the room. Derek took Sarah to draw Ava out. If she doesn't show, he'll kill Sarah and find another target. He's escalating, and escalation means bodies. So we send Ava in wired, with a full team in position. Tony was already strategizing. Tactical approach, controlled variables, extraction protocol. Derek's not an idiot. He'll check her for wires, for backup. Marco's gaze found Ava's. This only works if he believes she's alone and helpless. I am alone and helpless. The words came out bitter. No, you're not. Marco crossed to her, knelt so they were eye level. You're scared, which is rational, but you're not helpless. You ran toward danger at that warehouse. You used pepper spray to save my life. You've got survival instincts most people never develop. That was different. How? Because you were there. Because I wasn't alone. Ava's voice cracked. Now you're asking me to walk into a building with an armed man who wants me dead, and I'm supposed to just… What? Trust that you'll save me in time? Marco's hand covered hers. I'm asking you to trust that we'll do everything possible to bring you and Sarah home. But I won't lie to you. This is dangerous. Derek could kill you both before we can intervene. The odds aren't good. Then what's the alternative? We don't give him what he wants. We let the police handle it. File a missing persons report. Hope they find Sarah before… He stopped. Before Derek kills her anyway. Ava finished the thought. That's not an alternative. That's giving up. Elena's hand squeezed hers. Baby, you don't have to do this. It's not your fault Derek took Sarah, it's his. But she's there because of me. Because Derek can't hurt me directly, so he's hurting people I love. Ava looked at her mother, saw the fear and pride warring in her eyes. I can't let her die for me. You might die for her. I know. Ava turned back to Marco. What do I need to do? The next 4 hours were a crash course in staying alive. Tony taught her how to assess a room for exits and cover. Vincent showed her pressure points and dirty fighting techniques that might buy her seconds if things went wrong, and Marco drilled her on what to say, how to keep Derek talking, how to watch for tells that might indicate when he was about to snap. He'll want a monologue, Marco said as false dawn lightened the windows. Men like Derek, they need you to understand why they're hurting you. That's your advantage. Keep him talking, keep him focused on you, and stay away from anything he could use as a weapon. What if he just shoots me the second I walk in? He won't. Marco's certainty was absolute. He's brought you there for a reason. He wants you to see Sarah, wants you to feel responsible, wants to inflict maximum psychological damage before the physical. That buys us time. How much time? Enough. He handed her a small device that looked like a button. This is a tracker. Sew it into your waistband. It won't transmit audio, but it'll give us your location to within 10 feet. Ava took the tracker, turned it over in her hands. And if Derek finds it, then you tell him it's a button that fell off your jeans. Marco met her eyes. And you pray he believes you. At 5:47 a.m., Derek's text arrived. An address on the industrial south side. An abandoned textile factory that had been scheduled for demolition for 3 years. The message included a photo of Sarah, still alive but visibly deteriorating. Her eyes were red from crying, and a fresh bruise darkened her left cheek. Below the photo, 6:30 a.m. You're late, Sarah gets hurt. You bring anyone, Sarah dies. I'll be watching. 43 minutes. Vincent checked his watch. We need to move. The drive across the city was silent, except for Marco's phone calls coordinating his team. Ava sat in the back seat, her mother beside her, both of them holding hands like they used to when Ava was small and afraid of thunderstorms. I'm proud of you, Elena said quietly. Your father would be too. Dad would tell me I'm an idiot for walking into a trap. Maybe, but he'd also say that protecting family is worth the risk. Elena's grip tightened. You come back to me, you hear? Both of you. You and Sarah. I'll try. Don't try. Do it. They stopped 3 blocks from the factory. Marco had already sent Tony and 4 other men ahead to set up positions around the perimeter. Now he turned in his seat to face Ava. Last chance to back out. No, it's not. You know it and I know it. Ava checked her phone. 6:23. Let's go over it again. You walk in the front entrance, hands visible, no sudden movements. Find Derek and Sarah. Keep him talking for as long as possible. We'll be listening through a directional mic from across the street. The second we have a clear shot or an opening, we move. And if you don't get an opening, Marco's expression went hard. We make one. Ava climbed out of the SUV on legs that felt disconnected from her body. The morning air was cold enough to see her breath, and the factory loomed ahead like something from a nightmare. 5 stories of broken windows and rusted metal, graffiti covering every surface. Vincent handed her a bottle of water. Stay hydrated. Fear dehydrates you faster than you'd think. She drank, tasting nothing. Marco walked her to the corner where they could see the factory entrance but were still hidden from view. You're going to be okay. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise that I won't let Derek walk out of there alive if he hurts you. It should have been comforting. Instead, it just made everything feel more final. Ava started walking. The factory entrance was a loading dock with a rusted metal door hanging half off its hinges. She climbed the concrete steps, her footsteps echoing in the empty morning, and stepped inside. The smell hit her first. Mildew and old chemicals and something else, something organic and rotten. The interior was a vast space of support columns and debris, machinery long since stripped for scrap, leaving only bolts and oil stains on the concrete floor. Derek? Her voice sounded small in the cavernous space. Keep walking. His voice came from somewhere above, echoing. Straight back, through the door on your right. She walked, her eyes adjusting to the dimness. The door led to a stairwell, and she climbed 2 flights before emerging into what must have been an office level. Cubicle walls lay in pieces, filing cabinets tipped over, papers scattered like confetti. Sarah was in the far corner, tied to a metal chair, duct tape over her mouth. When she saw Ava, she made a muffled sound of pure terror. Derek stepped out from behind a support column, the shotgun in his hands pointed at Ava's chest. He looked worse than at the hospital. His eyes were bloodshot, his skin sallow, and he moved with the jerky unpredictability of someone strung out on stimulants or fear or both. "You actually came." He sounded surprised. "Thought for sure your boyfriend would talk you out of it." "He tried." Ava raised her hands, kept her voice steady. "I'm here, Derek. Let Sarah go." "Let her go?" He laughed, the sound bouncing off concrete walls. "Why would I do that? She's the only leverage I've got." "You wanted me. You've got me. There's no reason to keep her." Derek crossed to Sarah, pressed the shotgun barrel against her temple. Sarah's eyes rolled white with terror. "See? That's where you're wrong. I've got you, yeah. But how do I know you didn't bring backup? How do I know Marco's not out there with his army of thugs?" "Because you told me to come alone." Ava forced herself to look at Derek, not at Sarah's terrified face. "And because if Marco was here, you'd already be dead." The truth of that landed. Derek's finger twitched on the trigger and Ava's heart stopped, but he didn't fire. Instead, he lowered the shotgun slightly. "Take off your jacket. Slow." She did, letting it drop to the floor. "Turn around. Lift your shirt." Ava turned, lifted the back of her shirt to show she wasn't wearing a wire. The tracker in her waistband was invisible under denim, and Derek either didn't notice or didn't care. "Okay," he gestured with the shotgun. "Sit. Over there, against the wall." She sat where he indicated, maybe 15 feet from Sarah, close enough to see her aunt's tears, too far to reach her. Derek started pacing, the shotgun never wavering. "You know what the worst part was? Not the beating, not the broken ribs, it was the humiliation." His voice rose. "You made me look weak in front of everyone, made me run like a coward. Me. You are a coward." The words were out before Ava could stop them. Derek's face went purple. "What did you say?" "You heard me." Something in Ava had shifted. Maybe it was fear, or maybe it was the realization that if she was going to die here, she'd die telling the truth. "You hit women because you can't handle anyone who fights back. You burned down a diner because you couldn't burn down me. And now you've kidnapped a 62-year-old woman to prove what? That you're tough?" "Shut up." "You're pathetic, Derek. You always have been. That's why I left. Not because of Marco, not because of anyone else. Because I finally saw you for what you are. A small, scared man who needs violence to feel big." Derek crossed the distance between them in 3 strides and backhanded her across the face. The impact snapped her head sideways, and she tasted blood. But she didn't cry out, didn't give him the satisfaction. "Feel better?" she asked through split lips. He hit her again, harder. This time she did fall, her cheek slamming against concrete. "Derek, stop!" The voice came from the doorway. Ava's vision swam, but she could make out a figure, male, similar build to Derek, but older. Kyle Hale stood in the entrance, his face pale. "What the hell are you doing, man?" Kyle's voice shook. "You said you just wanted to scare them. You didn't say anything about—" "Get out, Kyle." "This is insane. You're going to kill someone." "I said get out." Derek swung the shotgun toward his brother, and in that second of distraction, Ava moved. She grabbed a piece of broken 2x4 from the debris beside her and swung it at Derek's knees. The impact wasn't hard enough to break anything, but it was enough to make him stumble. The shotgun went off, the blast deafening in the enclosed space. Kyle screamed and hit the ground. Sarah's muffled shrieks filled the air. Ava scrambled toward her aunt, her fingers clawing at the ropes. But Derek recovered faster than she expected. His boot caught her in the ribs, driving the air from her lungs, and suddenly he was on top of her, his hands around her throat. "You stupid bitch!" His grip tightened, cutting off oxygen. Ava's vision tunneled, black spots dancing at the edges. She clawed at his hands, his face, anything she could reach, but he was too strong, and she was too small, and this was how it ended. Glass shattered. Multiple windows, all at once. Derek's head jerked up, and that second of confusion was enough for Ava to drive her knee into his groin. He folded with a grunt, his grip loosening, and she pushed him off, gasping for air. Tony came through the window on a rappel line, hitting the ground in a crouch with a pistol in each hand. "Ava, down!" She flattened. Tony fired twice. The shots were impossibly loud, and Derek jerked backward, red blooming across his shoulder and thigh. The shotgun clattered from his hands. Then Marco was there, coming through the same window, moving to Ava with single-minded focus. "Are you hurt?" "Sarah, get Sarah." Vincent was already cutting Sarah's bonds, pulling the tape from her mouth as gently as possible. She collapsed into his arms, sobbing. Kyle was on the floor, unhurt but in shock, his hands over his head. Two more of Marco's men secured him while Tony kept his guns trained on Derek, who was writhing on the ground, screaming obscenities and bleeding. Marco pulled Ava to her feet, his hands checking her for injuries with professional efficiency. "Your throat. He was choking you." "I'm okay." Her voice was a rasp. "No, you're not." But he didn't argue, just held her steady while the room spun. An ambulance arrived 7 minutes later, followed by police. Detective Ramirez took one look at the scene. Derek bleeding on the floor, Ava's bruised throat, Sarah's traumatized state, and his expression went carefully neutral. "Ms. Carter, we meet again." "Detective, want to tell me what happened here?" Before Ava could answer, Lisa Chen materialized from somewhere, immaculate despite the early hour. "My client was kidnapped and held hostage by Mr. Hale, who then attempted to murder her. She acted in self-defense, as did Mr. DeLuca's security team, who arrived just in time to prevent Ms. Carter's death." Ramirez looked at Marco. "Your security team just happened to be here?" "Ms. Carter was wearing a tracker. When she was taken to this location against her will, we called the police and came to provide assistance." Marco's expression was blandly innocent. "I have the call logs if you need them." "I'm sure you do." Ramirez turned back to Ava. "You all right?" "No." The honesty surprised her. "But I'm alive." "That's something." He glanced at Derek, who was being loaded onto a stretcher, still cursing. "He's going away for a long time. Kidnapping, assault, attempted murder. That's 25 to life, easy." "Will it stick?" Ava asked. "Or will he make bail and come back?" "Not this time." Ramirez's voice carried conviction. "Not with Sarah Mitchell's testimony and the physical evidence. He's done." "Sarah." Ava turned to find her aunt wrapped in a blanket, paramedics checking her vitals. When their eyes met, Sarah burst into fresh tears. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." "Don't." Ava crossed to her, pulled her into a careful hug. "You have nothing to apologize for. He said he'd kill me if I didn't cooperate. Said he'd hurt Elena too. I was so scared." "I know, but it's over now. You're safe." Elena arrived in the SUV with Vincent, her wheelchair rolling across the rough ground with difficulty until Vincent simply picked her up and carried her to her sister. The reunion was tears and broken apologies and Elena's oxygen tube tangling between them. Ava stepped back, giving them space, and found Marco watching her from near the building entrance. "Thank you," she said when she reached him. "For what?" "For saving my life. Again." Marco's smile was tired. "You saved yourself. I just provided backup. I was about to die when Tony came through that window. But you fought, bought yourself those extra seconds." He touched her bruised throat gently, his expression darkening. "He's going to pay for this." "He already is. 25 to life, remember?" "That's the legal system's justice. I'm talking about mine." Ava saw the calculation in his eyes, the cold fury that had been there at the warehouse when he'd beaten Derek unconscious. "Marco, no. Let the law handle it. The law gave him bail before. Let him walk. Let him come after you again and again. And you're going to what? Have him killed in prison? Prove Ramirez right about who you are?" That landed. Marco's jaw tightened, but he stepped back. "You're right. I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Just let this be the end. Really the end." He nodded slowly. "Okay. For you." The hospital kept Ava overnight for observation. Bruised ribs, mild concussion, contusions on her throat that would turn spectacular shades of purple and yellow. Sarah was in the next room, being treated for dehydration and shock. And Elena refused to leave either of them, setting up camp in Ava's room with her oxygen tank and her crossword puzzles. Marco visited once, bringing flowers that weren't from Derek this time, and news that Kyle Hale was cooperating with police in exchange for immunity. Derek had manipulated him with promises of money and family loyalty, but Kyle had never intended for anyone to get hurt. "He's a weak man who made bad choices," Marco said, "but he's not evil, just stupid." "Is there a difference?" "Usually." Marco set the flowers on the bedside table. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck." Ava touched her throat gingerly. "But alive. That's more than I expected this morning. You're tougher than you think. Or luckier. Luck is just preparation meeting opportunity." Marco pulled up a chair, sat. "Tony says you picked up those defensive moves fast. Natural aptitude. Are you recruiting me?" "No, just observing that you might be good at the EMT thing. Quick thinking under pressure, comfort with violence, strong stomach." He paused. "Speaking of which, I made some calls. There's a program starting in 6 weeks. Tuition's covered, books included, and they're holding a spot for you." Ava stared at him. "You're serious." "Why wouldn't I be?" "Because I nearly died this morning. Because my aunt got kidnapped because of me. Because everything I touch turns to chaos. Or because you survived impossible odds and saved your aunt and yourself. Perspective matters." Marco leaned forward. "Ava, you can spend the rest of your life being defined by what Derek did to you, or you can become who you were meant to be despite him. Your choice." She wanted to argue, wanted to list all the reasons she wasn't ready, wasn't strong enough, wasn't anything enough. Instead, she heard herself say, "When does the program start?" Marco's smile was genuine. 6 weeks, first Monday of next month." "And my mom?" "She'll keep staying at the penthouse. I'm having modifications made, better air filtration for her lungs, a hospital bed if she needs it, physical therapy equipment." He held up a hand before Ava could protest. "Before you say you can't accept, remember that the penthouse is huge and mostly empty. You'd be doing me a favor. Place needs life in it." "That's a lie." "Maybe, but it's a lie I'm committed to." He stood, buttoned his suit jacket. "Get some rest. You've earned it." He was at the door when Ava spoke again. "Marco, why are you really doing this?" He turned back, and for a moment the mask slipped. "Because I couldn't save Maria from her first beating, or her second, or her third. But I can make damn sure you don't become her. Call it redemption. Call it selfishness. I don't care what you call it, as long as it keeps you alive and moving forward." Then he was gone, leaving Ava alone with her thoughts and her mother's soft snoring from the recliner. Derek was arraigned 3 days later from his hospital bed. The charges were extensive: kidnapping, assault with a deadly weapon, attempted murder, arson. The bail hearing lasted 10 minutes, and the judge denied it without hesitation. "The defendant has shown a pattern of escalating violence and disregard for court orders," the judge said. "He is remanded to custody pending trial." Lisa Chen called Ava with the news. "He's done. Even with a good lawyer, he's looking at 25 minimum. What if he gets parole? In 25 years, you'll be 48. He'll be 62. And honestly, the way he's living, he probably won't make it that long." Lisa's voice softened. "You're free, Ava. Really free. Free." The word felt foreign. Ava stood on Marco's roof 3 weeks later. The city spread out below like promises and possibilities. Her ribs had healed, the bruises faded to yellow-green. Sarah had returned to Phoenix with a security system Marco insisted on installing. And Elena was stronger than she'd been in months, the better medication working miracles. "You thinking about jumping?" Marco's voice came from behind her. "Thinking about flying." Ava turned to face him. "The EMT program starts Monday." "Nervous?" "Terrified," she smiled. "But the good kind, like standing at the edge of something important." "You'll be great at it." Marco joined her at the railing. "Fair warning, though. The instructors are hard asses. They'll push you." "Good. I need pushing." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over buildings and bridges. Somewhere down there, Derek was in a cell. Somewhere else, Sarah was safe. And here, on this roof, Ava felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. "Marco?" She didn't look at him. Thank you for everything. You've thanked me enough. Not for saving me. For believing I was worth saving. His hand found hers on the railing, warm and solid. You always were, Ava. You just needed time to see it. Maybe he was right. Maybe she'd spend the rest of her life proving it. The first day of EMT training hit Ava like a freight train she'd been watching approach for 6 weeks. She woke at 5 a.m. in the guest room that had become hers, her mother's soft snoring audible through the wall, and stared at the ceiling trying to convince herself she belonged here. In this program. In this life. In a future that didn't include looking over her shoulder, Marco was already up, dressed in running clothes, coffee brewing in the kitchen. He'd developed a routine over the past weeks. Early run, espresso, Wall Street Journal, then disappearing into his office to do whatever it was men like him did when they weren't saving waitresses from violent ex-boyfriends. Big day, he said when she emerged. Huge day. Ava poured coffee with hands that trembled slightly. What if I'm not good at it? Then you'll get better. That's how learning works. Marco folded his newspaper. Vincent's driving you. The program director is expecting you at 8. I can take the bus. You could. But Vincent's already got the car ready, and arguing with him is pointless. Marco's smile was slight. Humor me. First day jitters and public transportation don't mix well. He wasn't wrong. The training facility was a squat brick building on the edge of the medical district, sandwiched between a plasma donation center and a shuttered pharmacy. 23 students filed into the classroom that morning. Ava, the only one over 30, most of them fresh out of high school, with that invincible confidence youth provided. The instructor was a woman named Patricia Reeves, 50-something with gray hair pulled into a severe bun and eyes that had seen things people didn't come back from unchanged. EMT work isn't glamorous, she said by way of introduction. You'll see people on the worst days of their lives. You'll hold pressure on wounds that won't stop bleeding. You'll do CPR on children who won't wake up. And you'll go home and try to sleep knowing you did everything right and they died anyway. A kid in the front row, couldn't have been more than 19, raised his hand. So why do it? Patricia's smile was sad. Because sometimes you save one, and that one life makes every nightmare worth it. The first week was textbooks and mannequins, learning anatomy and protocols and the million ways the human body could fail. Ava studied until her eyes burned, drilling herself on medication dosages and trauma assessment while her mother watched game shows in the next room. Marco checked in every evening, asking about her day with genuine interest that surprised her. He'd made good on his promise about the penthouse modifications. Elena now had a hospital-grade bed with adjustable height, a physical therapist who came 3 times a week, and enough medical equipment to stock a small clinic. You're spending a fortune on us, Ava said one night over dinner that Marco's housekeeper had prepared. This has to stop. Why? Because we can't pay you back. Ever. You know that. Marco set down his fork. Did I ask you to pay me back? No, but then stop worrying about it. Your mother needs care. I can provide it. The math is simple. Nothing about this is simple. Ava pushed food around her plate. People are going to talk. Are probably already talking. Let them. Marco's voice was flat. Anyone with half a brain knows this is about making sure Elena lives long enough to see you graduate. The rest is noise. Elena spoke up from her recliner, oxygen tube in place. He's right, baby. And honestly, I'm too old and too sick to care what people think. You're not old. I'm 62 with stage 4 cancer. I'm old. Elena's smile took the sting from the words. And I'm grateful. So stop trying to give back something that was given freely. It should have settled the matter. It didn't, because Ava had spent her whole life understanding that everything came with a price, and the waiting for Marco's bill to come due was almost worse than paying it. Week 3 brought practical training, actually touching the mannequins, practicing CPR compressions until her shoulders ached, learning to splint fractures and dress wounds with gauze that kept slipping from her nervous fingers. You're overthinking it, Patricia said, watching Ava fumble a bandage for the 3rd time. In the field, you won't have time to think. You'll just do. So turn off your brain and let your hands remember. Easier said than done. But Ava tried, closing her eyes and feeling the steps instead of thinking them, and something clicked. The bandage wrapped smoothly, pressure even, edges tucked. There! Patricia's approval was worth more than gold. That's what I'm looking for. That night, Ava came home to find Marco in his office with another man she didn't recognize, younger, maybe 30, with the kind of face that belonged on television, selling insurance, or running for local office. Ava, this is David Chen, Lisa's brother. Marco gestured to the visitor. David's a contractor. We're discussing the diner rebuild. The diner? Ava repeated. Rosie's place. David pulled out architectural drawings. Mr. DeLuca reached out about funding the reconstruction. We're looking at a full renovation, new kitchen equipment, updated electrical, the works. Ava looked at Marco. You're rebuilding Rosie's diner. Rosie's rebuilding it. I'm just financing the construction. Marco's expression was carefully neutral. Community investment, good for business. You don't have business in that neighborhood. I do now. He turned back to David. Show her the plans. The drawings were beautiful. Rosie's diner transformed from a greasy spoon into something sleek and modern while keeping the bones of what made it special. Bigger kitchen, better ventilation, a dining area that could seat 50 instead of 30. Rosie approved this? Ava asked. She cried when she saw it. David's smile was genuine. Said it was more than she ever dreamed, kept asking how she'd pay for it. And what did you tell her? Marco answered before David could. That it's an investment in the neighborhood, which it is. Property values go up, area improves, everyone benefits. It was a lie wrapped in enough truth to sound plausible. When does construction start? Ava heard herself ask. Next month. Should be finished by Christmas. David gathered his drawings. Mr. DeLuca, I'll have the revised estimates by Friday. When David left, Ava turned to Marco. Why are you really doing this? I told you. The truth, Marco, not the version you tell David or Rosie or whoever asks. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he walked to the bar cart, poured 2 glasses of whiskey, and handed her one. Because Derek took something from you that mattered. Not just your safety, but your livelihood, your routine, the place where you felt normal. Marco swirled his glass, watching amber liquid catch the light. I can't give you back the time you lost or the fear you lived with, but I can make sure Rosie doesn't lose her life's work because some asshole wanted revenge. That's not your responsibility. Maybe not, but it's within my power, so why wouldn't I? He drank, set down the glass. You think everything I do has to have an angle. Sometimes I just see a problem and fix it. And Rosie's diner was a problem? Rosie's diner burning down while you were trying to rebuild your life was a problem. Yes. Marco met her eyes. Call it guilt. Call it responsibility. I don't care. The diner gets rebuilt either way. Ava wanted to argue, but exhaustion and gratitude tangled together until she couldn't separate them. Thank you, she said finally. Stop thanking me. Stop giving me reasons to. His smile was tired. Not likely. Week 5 brought ride-alongs. Patricia partnered Ava with a veteran EMT named Carlos, no relation to Marco's surveillance guy, who'd been running calls for 15 years and had the dark humor to prove it. First rule, Carlos said as they climbed into the ambulance. Don't fall in love with the patient. Second rule, don't expect gratitude. Third rule, always check your gear before a call because Murphy's Law is real and she's a bitch. Their first call was a diabetic emergency at a grocery store. Elderly man, confused and combative, blood sugar at 40. Ava held him steady while Carlos administered glucose, talking to the patient in a calm voice that cut through his confusion. You're okay, sir. We're here to help. Just need you to drink this for me. The man's vitals stabilized within minutes. By the time they loaded him into the ambulance, he was alert enough to be embarrassed. Sorry for the trouble, he mumbled. No trouble at all. Carlos checked his IV. But you need to be more careful with your insulin timing. Talk to your doctor about adjusting the dosage. The second call was a car accident, minor, no serious injuries, but a teenage girl was hysterical because her phone had shattered, and she couldn't call her parents. Ava sat with the girl while Carlos dealt with the driver, letting her use Ava's phone to make the call, talking her through the shock with steady patience. You're okay. Car's damaged, but that's what insurance is for. Your parents will be here in 10 minutes. Just breathe. The third call came at the end of their shift. Domestic disturbance, woman unconscious, police on scene. Ava's stomach dropped as they pulled up to an apartment building that could have been hers 6 months ago. Same peeling paint, Same broken front door lock. Same atmosphere of barely contained violence. The woman was in her 20s, bruises on her arms and face. Her boyfriend in handcuffs, screaming that she'd fallen. It was an accident. Officers were always taking the woman's side. Ava's hand shook as she checked vitals, and Carlos noticed. "You good?" he asked quietly. "Yeah," but her voice cracked. Carlos took over the assessment while Ava stepped back, her heart hammering. The boyfriend kept yelling, and the sound dragged her back to nights in locked bathrooms, Derek's fists on the door, promises that it would be different next time. "Ava," Carlos's voice cut through the spiral, "I need you to hold pressure here while I get the gurney." The work pulled her back, pressure on the wound, talking to the patient, monitoring her breathing. By the time they loaded her into the ambulance, Ava's hands had stopped shaking. "That was hard for you," Carlos said, as they drove to the hospital. "Yeah." "Personal?" "Yeah." Carlos didn't push, just nodded. "It gets easier. Seeing the stuff that reminds you of your own shit. Eventually you build walls, keep work separate from life. What if I don't want walls? Then you burn out in 2 years and find another career." Carlos's tone wasn't unkind, just factual. This job eats people who can't compartmentalize. You've got to decide if you can handle it or if you need to walk away before it destroys you. That night, Ava told Marco about the call. They were on the roof again, her favorite spot now, the city lights making everything feel both infinite and manageable. "I froze," she admitted, "saw that woman with bruises and heard that man screaming, and I was right back in my apartment with Derek." "But you didn't stay frozen." Marco leaned against the railing. "You did your job, helped the patient. That's what matters." Carlos says I need to build walls, keep work separate from life. Carlos is right, but walls don't have to mean not feeling, just means knowing when to let yourself feel and when to push it aside until later. "Is that what you do?" Marco's laugh was bitter. "I've got walls so high, I forget what's on the other side sometimes. So maybe don't take advice from me on healthy emotional processing." "But you feel things. I've seen it. Selectively. For people I care about. The rest," he trailed off. "The rest is just noise I've learned to tune out." Ava studied his profile against the lights. "Do you care about me?" The question hung between them, dangerous and honest. "Yes." Marco's voice was quiet. "More than I probably should." "Why shouldn't you?" "Because caring about people makes them targets, and you've already been a target once because of me." He turned to face her. "Derek escalated because I intervened. The diner burned because I made him look weak. Your aunt got kidnapped because he knew hurting people connected to you would hurt me too." "That's not—" "It is." Marco's conviction was absolute. "My world is violence and power plays and people looking for weaknesses to exploit. And the second they realize you matter to me, you become a weakness." "So what are you saying? That I should leave?" "I'm saying you deserve better than being collateral damage in someone else's war." Ava moved closer, close enough to see the conflict in his eyes. "What if I don't want better? What if I want this, messy and complicated and dangerous as it is?" "You don't know what you're asking for." "Don't I?" She touched his arm. "I've seen your world, Marco. I've been held at gunpoint in a factory because of it. I've watched men with weapons take orders from you. I know exactly what this is. And you're okay with it. I'm okay with you." The distinction mattered. "I don't love the violence or the gray areas or the constant threat assessment, but I love that you showed up when no one else would. That you believed I was worth saving. That you're rebuilding a diner because it mattered to me." Marco's hand covered hers. "I'm not a good man, Ava." "Maybe not. But you're a good man to me. That's all I need." They stood there in the cold, the city breathing below them, and something shifted. Not a kiss, not a declaration, just an understanding that whatever this was between them, it was real and worth fighting for. Week 8 brought final exams. Written tests on protocols and medications, practical demonstrations of every skill they'd learned. Ava studied until the words blurred together, drilling herself relentlessly while Elena watched with proud eyes. "You're going to do great," her mother said the night before the final. "You don't know that." "Yes, I do, because you're my daughter, and we don't quit." Elena's smile was weak but genuine. even when things get hard. The exams were brutal. 4 hours of written questions that made Ava second-guess every answer, followed by practical scenarios where Patricia and 2 other instructors watched with clipboard and stopwatch. Patient is unresponsive. Assess and treat. Begin. Ava's hands moved through the steps. Check airway, check breathing, check circulation, start CPR if needed, call for advanced life support. Her mind went quiet, letting training take over, and when Patricia called time, Ava realized she'd done everything right. Good work, Carter. Patricia made a notation on her clipboard. Next scenario. When it was over, Ava stumbled out of the building on shaky legs and found Vincent waiting with the car. "How'd it go?" he asked. "I either passed or failed spectacularly. Won't know until next week." She collapsed into the back seat. "Can we not go home yet? I need to decompress." Vincent drove her to a park by the river where joggers and dog walkers moved through the evening light. Ava sat on a bench, watching the water, and let herself feel the weight of the last 2 months. She'd survived Derek, started a new career, watched her mother's health stabilize, built something that looked almost like a life. Her phone rang. Unknown number, and her heart stopped before she remembered Derek was in prison awaiting trial. "Hello? Ava Carter?" A woman's voice, professional and neutral. "Speaking. This is Jennifer Walsh, Victim Services Coordinator with the DA's office. I wanted to give you a heads up that Derek Hale's trial date has been set. March 15th. 4 months away." "Will I have to testify?" Ava asked. "Almost certainly. You're the primary victim in the assault and kidnapping charges. Your testimony will be crucial." "And if I don't want to?" "Then the case gets weaker, and Derek might walk on some of the charges." Jennifer's voice was kind but firm. "I know testifying is difficult, but this is your chance to make sure he stays locked up." Ava thanked her and hung up, staring at the river without seeing it. Marco found her an hour later. Vincent had apparently called him when she didn't answer her phone. He sat beside her on the bench, not touching, just present. "Vincent said you got a call. Trial date set. March. You okay?" "I don't know." Ava turned to look at him. "I thought I was done with Derek. Thought he was locked up and I could just move on. But now I have to face him again in court, relive everything, let a jury decide if I'm telling the truth." "You are telling the truth." "Doesn't always matter. You said that yourself." She rubbed her eyes. "What if he gets a good lawyer? What if they paint me as some vindictive ex who made everything up?" "Then Lisa will shred that narrative in cross-examination." Marco's confidence was absolute. "And you'll have Sarah's testimony, the hospital records, the photos, the police reports. The evidence is overwhelming, but not guaranteed. Nothing's guaranteed." Marco took her hand. "But you're stronger than you think, and you won't be alone in that courtroom." The promise shouldn't have meant as much as it did. Results came back a week later. Ava had passed. Not at the top of her class, but solid middle with marks high enough to make Patricia nod approvingly. "You've got good instincts, Carter. Work on your speed and you'll be fine." The certification arrived by mail 3 days after that. Official EMT credentials with her name and photo, proof that she'd done something impossible. Elena cried when Ava showed her. "I'm so proud of you, baby. Couldn't have done it without you." Ava hugged her mother carefully. "Or Marco. That man." Elena's smile was knowing. "You love him?" The question caught Ava off guard. "I don't know. Maybe. Is that crazy?" "Little bit, but you've earned some crazy." Elena touched her daughter's face. "Just be careful. Men like Marco, they live in worlds where love is a liability." He said the same thing. "Then he's honest, at least. That's more than Derek ever was." The job offers came within a week. 3 different ambulance companies, all willing to hire a newly certified EMT with decent test scores. Ava accepted the one closest to the penthouse. 12-hour shifts, rotating schedule, starting pay that was more than she'd made waitressing, but still not enough to live independently. Not that she needed to, with Marco's offer to stay as long as necessary. Her first shift was a Tuesday, paired with a veteran paramedic named Jerome, who had 30 years in emergency medicine and the scars to prove it. "Stick with me, stay alert, and don't puke on the patient," Jerome said by way of introduction. Follow those rules and we'll get along fine. They ran 9 calls that shift. 3 were medical, chest pain, difficulty breathing, altered mental status. 4 were trauma, car accidents, a fall from scaffolding, a bar fight that left one man with a broken jaw. And 2 were psychiatric emergencies, 1 suicidal ideation, 1 drug-induced psychosis. Ava held it together through all of them, her training kicking in, hands steady, as she took vitals and started IVs and kept patients calm while Jerome coordinated with hospitals. The shift ended at 6 a.m., sunrise painting the city gold, and Jerome bought her coffee from a 24-hour diner. "You did good," he said. "Better than most rookies." "I was terrified the whole time." "That's normal. Fear keeps you sharp." Jerome stirred sugar into his coffee. "You'll see worse than tonight, stuff that'll make you question why you do this, but you'll also see miracles. Balances out, eventually." Ava wanted to believe him. Christmas came with snow and Rosie's diner grand reopening. The place looked transformed. New floors, new equipment, new everything, while somehow keeping the soul that made it Rosie's. A line of customers wrapped around the block on opening day, and Rosie stood behind the counter with tears streaming down her face. "This is too much," she told Marco when he showed up with Ava and Elena. "I can't ever pay you back." "Don't want you to." Marco's smile was genuine. "Just keep making good coffee and treating people right. That's payment enough." Rosie hugged him so hard he staggered, then turned to Ava. "You working here or what?" "I'm an EMT now." "I know. Saw your certification in the paper." Rosie's pride was obvious. "But you could pick up weekend shifts if you wanted. No pressure." Ava looked at the diner, shining and new but still Rosie's, still home in a way the penthouse would never be. "Saturday mornings," she heard herself say. 6 to noon, if that works." "Works perfect." Rosie squeezed her hand. "Welcome home, honey." Elena's health turned in January. Not worse exactly, but plateaued. The cancer wasn't growing, but it wasn't shrinking either. Her oncologist used words like managing and quality of life that Ava understood meant they were fighting for time, not cure. "How long?" Ava asked the doctor during a private consultation. "Could be 6 months, could be 2 years. Cancer doesn't follow schedules." The doctor's honesty was brutal but necessary. "The best thing you can do is make sure she's comfortable and spending time on things that matter." What mattered to Elena was watching Ava work. She'd sit in the penthouse living room with her crosswords and oxygen, waiting for Ava to come home from shifts with stories about patients saved and protocols followed. "Tell me about tonight," Elena would say, and Ava would recount the calls, the good saves, the hard losses, the routine transfers that paid the bills. "You're doing what you were meant to do," Elena said one night. "I can see it in your eyes, the way they light up when you talk about helping people." "Even the hard calls?" "Especially those, because you're choosing to show up anyway." Elena's smile was weak but proud. "That's courage, baby. Real courage." Derek's trial started in March on a Monday that promised rain but delivered sleet. The courthouse was downtown, limestone and marble, with metal detectors and security that would have made Marco's team look casual. Lisa Chen met Ava at the entrance, looking every inch the shark she was, in a navy suit and heels sharp enough to be weapons. "Ready?" Lisa asked. "No." "Good. Nerves keep you honest." Lisa guided her through security. "Remember what we practiced. Answer only what's asked. Don't elaborate. Don't let the defense attorney get under your skin." The courtroom was smaller than Ava expected, wood paneling and fluorescent lights that made everyone look sickly. Derek sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, wrists shackled, and when he saw Ava, he smiled. Not a friendly smile. A promise. Ava looked away. The prosecution went first, laying out the case with methodical precision. Sarah testified about her kidnapping, her voice shaking but clear. The police presented evidence: the warehouse, the weapons, the security footage, and the medical examiner showed photos of Ava's injuries that made the jury wince. Then it was Ava's turn. Walking to the witness stand felt like moving through water. The bailiff swore her in, and she sat, hyper-aware of every eye in the courtroom. The prosecutor was a woman named Sandra Diaz, who'd been doing this for 20 years. She walked Ava through the relationship with Derek, the abuse, the restraining order, the escalation. Ava answered each question carefully, her voice steadier than she felt. And when Derek attacked you at the factory, what did you think was going to happen? Sandra asked. I thought he was going to kill me. Ava looked at the jury, and probably Sarah too. Objection, speculation. Derek's lawyer was on his feet. Overruled. The judge's voice was firm. The witness can testify to her state of mind. Sandra continued. Did Derek say anything while he was choking you? He called me a stupid bitch. Said I should have just stayed with him. And if Mr. DeLuca's security team hadn't arrived when they did, what do you believe would have happened? Objection. Overruled. Answer the question, Miss Carter. Ava met Derek's eyes across the courtroom. I'd be dead. The defense attorney's cross-examination was brutal. He implied she'd provoked Derek, suggested the relationship had been mutually violent, questioned why she'd gone to Marco instead of police. Isn't it true, Ms. Carter, that you were having an affair with Mr. DeLuca while still in a relationship with my client? No. But you moved into his penthouse, accepted expensive gifts, let him pay for your mother's medical care. After Derek tried to kill me, yes. So you're not denying the financial relationship. Lisa was on her feet. Objection. Counsel is badgering the witness. Sustained. Move on, counselor. The defense attorney switched tactics, questioning her memory of events, suggesting trauma had made her unreliable. Ava held her ground, answering each question the way Lisa had taught her, calm, factual, unshakable. When it was over, she stepped down on legs that barely held her. The trial lasted 3 days. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Derek's face went white as the verdict was read. Kidnapping, assault with a deadly weapon, attempted murder. The judge set sentencing for 2 weeks out, but everyone knew what it meant. 25 to life, minimum. Ava sat in the gallery between Marco and her mother, and for the first time in months, she let herself cry. Not from fear, from relief. It was over, really over. The sentencing hearing was brief. The judge looked at Derek with the kind of cold disappointment reserved for people who'd wasted every chance they'd been given. Mr. Hale, you've shown a pattern of escalating violence spanning years. You've terrorized multiple women, destroyed property, and attempted murder. The court sees no evidence of remorse or rehabilitation. Derek tried to speak, but his lawyer quieted him. I hereby sentence you to 27 years in state prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years. May you use that time to reflect on the harm you've caused. The gavel came down with finality. Ava watched them take Derek away in shackles, his orange jumpsuit bright against the courtroom wood, and felt nothing. No triumph, no vindication, just emptiness where fear used to live. Outside, the April sun was warm and promising. Lisa shook Ava's hand with genuine pride. You were perfect in there. Strong, credible, unshakable. She turned to Marco. Take care of her. She's earned some peace. Planning on it, Marco said. Elena was tired from the ordeal, so Vincent drove them back to the penthouse. She went straight to bed while Ava stood by the windows, watching the city go about its business, unchanged by her small victory. How are you feeling? Marco asked. Empty? Ava touched the glass. I thought I'd feel relieved or happy or something. Instead, I just feel... Done? Yeah, done. She turned to face him. 27 years. He'll be 70 when he gets out. If he gets out. And you'll be 55. Living a life he can't touch. Marco moved beside her. That's the win, Ava. Not the sentence. The life. What life? The question came out more bitter than intended. I work 12-hour shifts running calls. I live in your penthouse because I still can't afford my own place. My mother's dying slowly despite all the money you've thrown at keeping her alive. That's not a life? It's borrowed. All of it. Borrowed money, borrowed home, borrowed time. Ava's voice cracked. When does it become mine? Marco was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, What do you want it to look like? Your life, if you could build it from scratch. Ava thought about it. I want a place my mom and I can afford on our own. Small, but ours. I want to work as an EMT without feeling like I'm playing dress-up in someone else's career. I want to wake up without checking if Derek's broken parole. She paused. And I want to know if this thing between us is real or if it's just gratitude wearing a mask. What thing? Don't play stupid. You know what I'm talking about. Marco's smile was slight. I know. Just wanted to hear you say it. I think I'm falling in love with you. The words came out quiet but certain, which is probably stupid and definitely complicated, but there it is. Not stupid. Marco touched her face gently. Complicated, yeah, but not stupid. Are you going to say it back? I don't know if I can. His honesty was brutal. I care about you more than I've cared about anyone in years. I want to protect you and see you succeed and spend time with you. But love? I'm not sure I'm capable of that anymore. It should have hurt. Instead, it was just honest. Okay, Ava said. Then we take it slow. Figure out what this is without rushing to put labels on it. I can do slow. Can you? Ava's smile was teasing. You're not exactly patient. For you, I'll learn. Marco pulled her closer, and when he kissed her, it was gentle and tentative and nothing like the passion in movies, but somehow perfect anyway. They stood there in the fading light. The city spread out below them, and Ava felt something she hadn't felt in years. Possibility. Elena passed 3 months later on a Sunday morning in July. She went peacefully in her sleep, her crossword puzzle half finished on the bedside table, her oxygen machine humming softly. Ava found her when she came to check after her night shift. For a moment, she just stood in the doorway, watching her mother's still form, and felt the weight of inevitable loss settle into her bones. Marco handled the arrangements with the same quiet efficiency he brought to everything. Funeral at a small chapel, burial next to Ava's father, reception at the penthouse for the handful of people who'd known Elena. Rosie came, and Patricia from the EMT program, and Sarah flew in from Phoenix looking older and more fragile. They shared stories about Elena's stubborn pride and wicked humor, and Ava listened to them describe her mother through their eyes. She was proud of you, Sarah said when they were alone. Talked about you nonstop. How you'd survived Derek, become an EMT, built a life. I wouldn't have survived without her, Ava said. She kept me going when I wanted to give up. That's what mothers do. Sarah squeezed her hand. And now you honor her by living the life she wanted for you. After the funeral, Ava spent a week in a fog, going through her mother's belongings, deciding what to keep and what to donate. Marco gave her space but stayed close, appearing with food she didn't eat and silent company she needed. What happens now? He asked one evening. I need to find my own place. Ava looked around the penthouse. This was always temporary. Doesn't have to be. Yeah, it does. Her voice was gentle but firm. I need to stand on my own, Marco. Need to know I can make it without your safety net. And us? Us doesn't change. I'm not leaving you, just leaving the penthouse. She took his hand. Unless you can't handle dating someone who lives in a studio apartment and works 80-hour weeks. Marco's smile was real. I think I can manage. The apartment Ava found was small. 1 bedroom, galley kitchen, bathroom that barely had room to turn around. But it was hers, paid for with her own money, in a building with good locks and neighbors who minded their own business. She moved in on a Saturday, and Marco helped carry boxes despite her protests that he'd hired people for that. I want to help, he said, hauling her mattress up 3 flights of stairs. Is that allowed? I guess. Ava smiled despite herself. But you're not buying me furniture. I'm doing this on my own. Even if the furniture I could buy would be much nicer? Especially then. They spent the day assembling secondhand furniture and hanging curtains and arguing about where things should go. By evening, the apartment looked lived in and loved, and Ava stood in the center feeling something close to peace. Thank you, she told Marco, for everything. The penthouse, the support, the space to figure things out. You're welcome. He pulled her close. And for the record, I love you. The words hung in the air, unexpected and perfect. You love me? Ava's voice was barely a whisper. Took me a while to figure it out. But yeah, I love you. Marco's smile was crooked. Probably have for months. Just didn't know how to say it. So you waited until I moved out? Seemed like better timing. Less pressure. Ava laughed and kissed him and felt her life click into place like puzzle pieces she hadn't known were scattered. 6 months later, Rosie's Diner held its 1-year anniversary celebration. The place was packed. Regulars from the old days mixed with new customers drawn by the renovations and the food that was still as good as ever. Ava worked the morning shift, pouring coffee and taking orders like she'd never left, and when her break came, she stood outside watching the neighborhood come alive. Derek was in prison. Her mother was at peace. And Ava Carter, former waitress, former victim, current EMT, and survivor, was building a life on her own terms. Marco showed up at noon with flowers and that crooked smile she'd come to love. "Busy morning?" he asked. "Crazy busy. Rosie's threatening to hire 2 more servers." "She should. Place is thriving." He handed her the flowers. "These are for you, for surviving everything and coming out stronger." Ava took the flowers, breathed in the scent, and felt tears prick her eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have. You just didn't have to." Marco kissed her forehead. "That's the difference." They stood there in the afternoon sun, watching the city move around them, and Ava understood what her mother had meant about honoring her memory. Living. Really living. Not just surviving, but thriving. Choosing joy over fear. Building something real from the ashes of what had been destroyed. Rosie called from the doorway, "Ava, honey, you back on? Or what?" "Coming." Ava turned to Marco. "Dinner tonight? My place?" "Wouldn't miss it." She went back inside, tied her apron, and got to work. And for the first time in her life, Ava Carter wasn't running from anything. She was running toward everything she'd ever wanted.